The emergency room doors exploded inward with a crash that made every head snap up. A bleeding man in torn fatigue stumbled through, one arm wrapped around his ribs, the other gripping a leash attached to a snarling Belgian Malinois that looked ready to tear apart anything that moved. The dog's fur was matted with blood. Its own or someone else's, nobody could tell. Its eyes were wild, teeth bared, a guttural growl vibrating through the waiting room like a warning siren. The man collapsed against the intake desk, gasping, "My dog! He needs help!" And that's when the dog lunged. Security froze. The intake nurse screamed, and in the chaos, a small figure in scrubs nobody had bothered learning the name of stepped forward, dropped to one knee, and locked eyes with the animal. The dog stopped mid-snarl. Its ears flicked back. Then it sat. Just like that. The room went silent. And in that silence, something far more dangerous than a wounded animal was set into motion. Something that would rip through Redwood Bay Medical Center like a scalpel through skin, exposing every rotten thing underneath. If you want to see how far a single moment of courage can go, how one quiet nurse brought an entire system to its knees, stay with me until the very end. Drop a comment with the city you're watching from. I want to know how far this story travels. The man hit the floor hard. Blood smeared across the white tiles as he tried to push himself up, one hand still clutching the leash. His breathing came in sharp, shallow bursts. The dog beside him was still growling, low and continuous, like a machine idling before it tears something apart. Its eyes tracked every movement in the room, security guards inching closer, nurses backing toward the doors, a doctor frozen halfway through typing on his tablet. "Sir, you need to let go of the leash." The security guard had his hand on his radio, voice tight. "We can't help you if that thing is—" "He's not a thing." The man's voice was hoarse, scraped raw. "He's my partner. He's hurt. Just somebody help him." Nobody moved. The intake nurse, a woman with 20 years of ER experience and zero tolerance for anything that complicated her shift, folded her arms. "Sir, this is a hospital. We treat people. Animal control can—" "He's bleeding out." "Then you should have gone to a vet." The man's face twisted, somewhere between rage and desperation. "There isn't time. Please." The dog's growl deepened. Its lip curled back, showing more teeth. A younger nurse near the back muttered something about rabies and took another step toward the exit. That's when Ava Carter stepped forward. She was small, forgettable. The kind of person who'd been at Redwood Bay Medical Center for 3 weeks and still got mistaken for a volunteer. She wore the same scrubs as everyone else, kept her hair tied back, didn't speak unless spoken to. She'd been standing near the supply closet, holding a box of gauze, watching the whole thing unfold like she was waiting for something. She set the box down, walked straight toward the dog. "Carter, what are you doing?" The intake nurse's voice went sharp. "Get back here." Ava didn't answer. She moved slowly, hands loose at her sides, eyes never leaving the animal. The dog's head swiveled toward her, ears pinned back, still growling. Security tensed. The man on the floor tried to warn her, words coming out garbled through pain. She dropped to one knee 3 feet from the dog, didn't reach out, didn't make any sudden moves, just knelt there, calm, breathing steady, like she had all the time in the world. The dog stopped growling. Its ears came forward. The tension in its body didn't disappear, but something shifted. Some invisible signal passed between them. Ava tilted her head slightly, the way you might acknowledge someone you've known a long time. Then she spoke, voice low, barely more than a murmur. "Easy. You're okay." The dog sat. The room went still. Not the kind of stillness that comes before something breaks, but the kind that follows a shock. Nobody knew what to say. Nobody knew what they'd just seen. Ava glanced at the man on the floor. "How long has he been bleeding?" The man blinked at her, dazed. 10, maybe 15 minutes. There was an accident. He tried to pull me out and something, glass, metal, I don't know, it cut him across the ribs." Ava nodded. She looked at the dog again. "Can I touch him?" He doesn't let people. Can I touch him?" The man hesitated, then nodded. Ava reached out slowly, palm up, and the dog leaned forward to sniff her hand. Then it licked her fingers once and sat back down. She ran her hand along its side, careful, checking for injuries. Her fingers found the wound, a deep gash running along the animal's rib cage, still bleeding but not spurting. Nasty, but not immediately fatal if it got treated. She looked up at the intake nurse. "I need a suture kit, antiseptic, and a blanket. And someone get this man a gurney." The intake nurse didn't move. Her face had gone red. "You don't give orders here, Carter. You're a nurse," Ava said evenly. "And there's a patient bleeding on your floor. That's an animal. That's a living being in distress. Which part of your oath did you skip?" The intake nurse's mouth opened and closed. Before she could respond, a voice cut through the room like a blade. "What the hell is going on here, doctor?" Richard Hollis, the hospital director, came striding through the ER doors, tie slightly loosened, tablet under one arm, expression already locked into irritation before he even knew what he was irritated about. He was tall, mid-50s, the kind of man who wore authority like cologne, heavy and obvious. He took one look at the scene. Man on the floor, dog sitting calmly next to a nurse nobody important knew, blood smeared across the tiles, and his face darkened. "Someone want to explain why there's an animal in my ER?" The intake nurse jumped in immediately. "Sir, this man brought in an injured dog, and Carter here decided to—" "I'm treating a patient," Ava said, not looking up. She was pressing gauze against the dog's side now, applying pressure to slow the bleeding. The dog sat perfectly still, eyes half closed, like it trusted her completely. Hollis stared at her. "You're treating an animal." "I'm treating an injury." "This is a hospital, not a veterinary clinic." "This is an emergency room," Ava said quietly. "We treat emergencies." Hollis's jaw tightened. "Carter, is it?" "Yes, sir." "How long have you been here?" 3 weeks. 3 weeks. He repeated it like it explained everything. "And in those 3 weeks, did anyone explain to you that we have protocols, procedures, that you don't just—" He gestured sharply at the dog. "Decide to perform veterinary care on the ER floor?" Ava finally looked up at him. Her expression didn't change. The alternative was letting him bleed out while we argued about policy. The silence that followed was heavier than before. A few of the nurses exchanged glances. Security looked uncertain. The man on the floor was staring at Ava like she'd just stepped between him and a bullet. Hollis took a slow breath, the kind meant to communicate that he was being very, very patient. "Carter, step away from the animal." "I'm almost done." "That wasn't a request." Ava didn't move. She kept pressure on the wound, kept her hand steady on the dog's side. The dog's breathing had evened out. It looked calmer than it had since it came through the doors. Hollis's voice dropped. "If you don't step away right now, you're fired." That got everyone's attention. A few nurses looked genuinely shocked. The intake nurse looked smug. The man on the floor opened his mouth to protest, but Ava spoke first. "Then fire me." Hollis blinked. "What?" "If that's what it takes to make sure this dog doesn't die on your floor, then fire me." She kept her eyes on the dog, kept working. "But I'm not moving until I'm done." The air in the room felt like it was vibrating. Hollis's face went from red to pale, then back to red again. He looked around, at the nurses, at security, at the man on the floor, like he was waiting for someone to acknowledge how absurd this was. Nobody said anything. Finally, he pointed at Ava. "You're done. Get out." Ava tied off the bandage she'd been wrapping around the dog's torso. She checked it once, made sure it was secure, then stood up slowly. The dog looked up at her, ears forward, tail giving a single uncertain wag. She looked at Hollis. "I need someone to monitor him for the next hour. If the bleeding starts again—" "You don't work here anymore," Hollis said coldly. "You don't get to make recommendations." Ava held his gaze for a moment, then nodded. She glanced down at the man on the floor. "You should get that looked at. Ribs, maybe internal bleeding. Don't wait." The man nodded, speechless. Ava turned and walked toward the exit. No argument, no theatrics. Just a quiet, tired woman who'd done what she thought was right and was now paying for it. The ER doors swung shut behind her. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Hollis snapped his fingers at a nurse. "Get that man on a gurney. Someone call animal control to deal with the dog, and clean this mess up before anyone else sees it." The staff scattered. The man on the floor was helped onto a stretcher, still staring at the doors Ava had walked through. The dog stayed where it was, sitting quietly, blood-soaked bandage wrapped around its ribs. When one of the nurses approached with a lead pole, the dog's lips pulled back. The growl returned, deeper this time, a sound that made everyone back up fast. "Christ," someone muttered. "We're going to need a trank." "No." The man on the stretcher was being wheeled toward a bay, but he twisted around, wincing. "Don't you touch him. He's trained. He won't hurt anyone unless—" "Unless what?" Hollis snapped. "Unless we try to help? That thing is a liability." "That thing saved my life." The man's voice cracked. "Twice, once in Kandahar, once tonight. So if you've got a problem with him, you've got a problem with me." Hollis didn't respond. He just waved a hand, dismissive, and walked toward his office. The intake nurse started making calls. Security hovered near the dog, keeping distance, waiting for animal control. Outside, Ava stood in the ambulance bay, arms crossed, staring at nothing. The night air was cool. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. She didn't cry, didn't curse, just stood there, breathing, trying to figure out what came next. 3 weeks. She'd lasted 3 weeks before everything fell apart again. Maybe that was just how it worked for people like her. Maybe some people weren't meant to stay anywhere long. She heard footsteps behind her, turned. The man from the ER was limping toward her, one hand pressed against his side, the other gripping the gurney rail like it was the only thing keeping him upright. A nurse was yelling at him to get back inside, but he ignored her. "Hey!" His voice was rough. "Hey, wait!" Ava stopped. "You should be getting treated." "I will. In a minute." He took a few more steps, breathing hard. "What you did in there got me fired." "You saved my partner's life." "I bandaged a dog." "No." He shook his head, emphatic. "You didn't just bandage him. You calmed him down. You knew exactly what to do. Most people, most trained people, they freeze when Rex gets like that. But you didn't. You just—" He stopped, studied her. "Who are you?" Ava didn't answer. The man's eyes narrowed. "You military?" "No." "You're lying." "I'm not." "Then where'd you learn to do that?" Ava looked away. "Doesn't matter. It's done." "It matters to me." He stepped closer, lowered his voice. "Listen, I don't know what your story is, and I'm not going to push, but I owe you. So if there's anything, there's not. If you need a reference, a contact, anything, I don't." Ava's voice was flat. "I appreciate it, but I don't." The man looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He just nodded slowly, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled business card. "Take it anyway, just in case." Ava took the card without looking at it. The man gave her one last long look, then turned and limped back toward the ER. The nurse was waiting, furious, and immediately started lecturing him. He let her, too tired to fight. Ava glanced at the card. It was worn, the ink smudged in places. Sergeant Danny Briggs, a phone number, nothing else. She shoved it in her pocket and started walking toward the parking lot. Her car was old, beat up, the kind of vehicle that blended into any background. She unlocked it, slid into the driver's seat, and sat there for a moment, hands on the wheel, staring at the dashboard. Then she heard it. A low rumble, distant at first, then growing louder. She looked up. 4 black SUVs rolled into the ambulance bay in perfect formation, moving fast but controlled, like they'd done this 1,000 times. They stopped in a line, engines idling, windows tinted so dark you couldn't see inside. No lights, no sirens, just presence. Ava's stomach dropped. The doors opened. Men stepped out, 6 of them, maybe more. They wore dark fatigues, no visible insignia, but everything about the way they moved screamed military. Not regular military, something else. They spread out in a loose perimeter, eyes scanning the area, hands resting near sidearms. One of them, a man with silver at his temples and a face carved out of stone, walked straight toward the ER entrance. Ava didn't move. Couldn't. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. The man stopped in front of the doors, looked at her briefly, just a glance like he was cataloging her presence, then pushed through into the ER. Inside, Hollis was in his office, halfway through an email to legal about limiting liability, when someone knocked. He didn't look up. "Come in." The door opened. The man in fatigues walked in like he owned the place. Hollis glanced up. irritated, then froze. The man closed the door behind him. Didn't sit, just stood there, hands clasped behind his back, posture military perfect. Dr. Hollis? Yes. Who are said? Where's the dog? Hollis blinked. I'm sorry? The military working dog that came through your ER about 20 minutes ago. Where is it? Hollis straightened in his chair, trying to recover his authority. We're handling the situation. Animal control has been called. The animal will be removed, and… Removed? The man's voice didn't rise, but something in it made Hollis stop talking. You called animal control on a military asset? We didn't know. You didn't ask. The silence stretched. Hollis opened his mouth, closed it. The man stepped closer to the desk. My name is Colonel Nathan Cross. That dog is part of an active K-9 unit stationed out of Fort Hays. The man who brought him in is Sergeant Danny Briggs, a decorated combat veteran with 2 tours in Afghanistan. And the nurse who treated them, where is she? Hollis's face went pale. She was terminated. For what? Violating hospital protocol. She treated an animal on the ER floor without authorization. Cross stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out of the office without another word. Hollis sat there, heart pounding, not sure if he should follow or call security or just stay put and hope the problem went away. He chose the last option. It was a mistake. Cross walked into the ER proper. His men had already spread through the space, quiet and efficient, not disrupting anything but making their presence very clear. Patients stared. Nurses whispered. Security didn't know what to do. Cross spotted the dog immediately, still sitting in the same spot, bandage visible. Animal control officer approaching with a catchpole and a nervous expression. Stop. The animal control officer froze. Cross walked over, knelt down next to the dog. The dog's ears came forward. Its tail wagged once. Cross ran his hand over the bandage, checking it, then looked up at the officer. You're not taking this dog anywhere. Sir, I have orders. From who? Hospital administration. Overruled. Cross stood. This is a military working dog. Federal property. You don't have jurisdiction. The officer looked at his supervisor, who was standing near the intake desk, phone already out. The supervisor made a call, spoke quietly, then hung up and nodded at the officer. We're done here. Cross didn't watch them leave. He was scanning the room, looking for something. He spotted Briggs on a gurney in Bay 3, being stitched up by a resident who looked about 16. Cross walked over. Briggs? The sergeant looked up, wincing as the resident pulled another stitch. Sir? You okay? I've had worse. The dog? Some nurse patched him up. She knew what she was doing, real precise, real calm. Briggs paused. Then the director fired her. Cross's jaw tightened. What's her name? Carter, Ava Carter. Cross pulled out his phone, made a call. It was answered on the first ring. I need a background check. Ava Carter, nurse. Currently employed, scratch that. Recently terminated from Redwood Bay Medical Center. Priority flag. Send it to my mobile. He hung up, looked at Briggs. She say anything to you? Where she's from? Where she trained? No, sir. She didn't talk much, but the way she handled Rex… Briggs shook his head. I've seen trainers freeze up around him. She didn't even hesitate. Cross nodded slowly. His phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, scanned the information, and his expression shifted. Not much, just a flicker. But it was there. Sir? Briggs asked. Cross didn't answer. He turned and walked out of the ER, back toward the ambulance bay. His men followed without a word. Outside, Ava was still sitting in her car, trying to convince herself to start the engine and leave. She saw Cross coming. Her first instinct was to drive. Just go. But something kept her there, hands on the wheel, watching him approach. He stopped next to her window, tapped on the glass. She rolled it down halfway. Ava Carter. It wasn't a question. She nodded. Step out of the car, please. Am I under arrest? No. Then I'd rather stay here. Cross studied her through the window. You treated the K-9. I did. Where'd you learn to do that? Ava didn't answer. You're not a veterinary nurse. Your file says general nursing, basic ER rotation, standard civilian training, nothing that would explain what you did in there. I got lucky. No, you didn't. Cross's voice was calm, but there was weight behind it. That dog is trained to assess threats. He doesn't trust civilians. He barely trusts other handlers. But he sat for you. He let you touch him. He let you work on him without sedation. That doesn't happen by accident. Ava looked away. Maybe he was just tired. He wasn't tired. He was calm, because you knew how to make him calm. Cross leaned slightly closer to the window. So I'm going to ask you again. Where did you learn to do that? Ava's hands tightened on the wheel. She didn't answer. Cross watched her for a long moment, then straightened. You were part of something. I don't know what, but you were trained. Probably trained well. And for some reason you ended up here, working a low-level ER job, keeping your head down. That about right? Ava's throat was tight. She still didn't answer. Cross pulled out his phone, showed her the screen. It was a file. Her file. Name, date of birth, nursing license, employment history. Standard stuff. But at the bottom, in red text, classified access restricted. This popped up when I ran your name, Cross said quietly. Which means someone, somewhere, flagged you. And whatever they flagged you for, it's above my clearance level. So either you're in witness protection, you're involved in something federal, or... He paused. You used to be someone else. Ava's heart was pounding. She forced herself to meet his eyes. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. I'm a nurse, that's all. Cross didn't push. He just nodded slowly, like he expected that answer. All right, here's what's going to happen. You're going to come back inside with me. We're going to sit down in a private room, and you're going to explain to me how a civilian nurse with a standard license knows field trauma protocols used by special operations medics. And if I refuse, then I'll have federal agents here in 10 minutes who will ask you the same questions, and they won't be as polite. Ava stared at him. She could see it in his eyes. He wasn't bluffing. She looked past him, toward the ER, where nurses were still moving around, oblivious, where Hollis was probably already covering his ass, where everything she had tried to leave behind was about to come crashing back. She turned off the car, opened the door, stepped out. Cross gestured toward the building. After you. They walked back inside together, Cross slightly behind her, his men forming a loose escort. Nurses stared. Security didn't stop them. Hollis, watching from his office window, felt something cold settle in his chest. Cross led Ava to a consultation room near the back of the ER, small and windowless, with a table and 2 chairs. He closed the door, gestured for her to sit. She did. He sat across from her, hands folded on the table. I'm not here to make your life harder, he said. I'm here because a military dog and a veteran walked into your ER, and you handled it like someone who's done it before. A lot. So either you're going to tell me where you trained, or I'm going to keep digging until I find out. Your choice. Ava looked at her hands. They were steady. That was good. She'd trained herself not to shake. I worked in trauma units before this. High-volume ERs. You see a lot. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. Cross leaned back slightly. All right, let's try something else. The dog, Rex, he's trained to detect explosives, track hostile targets, and protect his handler in combat zones. He's also trained to recognize specific behavioral patterns. People who've been in combat. People who've seen violence up close. He can smell adrenaline, read body language. And he responded to you like you were one of us. Ava didn't flinch. Maybe I'm just good with animals. Maybe. Cross watched her. Or maybe you've been in situations where staying calm under pressure was the difference between living and dying. Situations where you had to treat injuries in bad conditions, no backup, no equipment, just your hands, and whatever you could improvise. Sound familiar? Ava met his eyes. You're reaching. Am I? The door opened. One of Cross's men stepped in, handed him a tablet, whispered something. Cross looked at the screen, his expression unchanging, then dismissed the man with a nod. He set the tablet on the table, facing Ava. It showed a military record. Not hers, someone else's. A woman. Lieutenant Mara Finch, medical officer, Special Operations Task Force, deployed 2014 to 2017. Listed as KIA in 2017 during a classified operation in Syria. Ava's breath caught. Cross watched her reaction. You know her? No. Yes, you do. I can see it. Ava looked away. Lots of people died in Syria. Not like this. Cross tapped the screen. Lieutenant Finch was part of a Black Ops medical unit embedded with JSOC. They operated behind enemy lines, treating casualties in hostile territory. No medevac, no support. Just a handful of medics keeping soldiers alive in places that didn't exist on any map. The unit was disbanded after a mission went sideways. Most of the personnel were reassigned. A few disappeared, and one, he paused, was declared dead. Ava's jaw tightened. She didn't look at the tablet. Cross leaned forward. The thing is, bodies were never recovered from that mission. Just dog tags and gear, no DNA confirmation, no remains, just a report that said killed in action and a closed file, which is convenient because it means anyone who survived could disappear, start over, new name, new life, new identity. That's a nice story, Ava said quietly, but it's got nothing to do with me. Doesn't it? Cross slid the tablet closer. Because the skill set you demonstrated tonight, trauma management, improvised field care, handling a combat-trained K9 without hesitation, that's exactly what someone from Finch's unit would know. Hell, it's exactly what Finch herself would know. Ava stood up. I'm done. Sit down. No. Her voice was steady, but there was an edge to it now. I answered your questions. I told you what I know. If you want to spin some conspiracy theory about dead soldiers and fake identities, that's your business. But I'm leaving. She walked toward the door. Cross didn't stop her, but as her hand touched the handle, he spoke. Your real name is Mara Finch. You were declared KYA 8 years ago after a mission in Raqqa. But you didn't die. You got out, and you've been hiding ever since. Ava froze. Cross kept talking, voice calm, matter of fact. I don't know why you're hiding. Maybe you're running from something. Maybe you saw something you weren't supposed to. Maybe you just couldn't go back. I don't care. But I need to know if you're a threat. Ava turned slowly. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. I'm not. Then prove it. Tell me what happened. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the ventilation system. Then Ava walked back to the table, sat down, looked Cross in the eye. If I tell you, people die. Cross didn't blink. People are already dying. That's why I'm here. Ava took a breath, let it out slow. The mission in Raqqa, it wasn't a rescue op, it was an extraction. We were supposed to pull out a high-value target, someone who'd been feeding intel to coalition forces. But the intel was bad. The safe house was compromised. When we got there, it was a trap. How many made it out? 3. Out of 12. Cross's expression didn't change. And you were one of them. I was. What happened to the other 2? Ava's jaw tightened. One died in transit, sepsis. The other... She stopped. The other didn't make it past the border. And you? I walked. 3 days through hostile territory. No comms, no exfil, no backup. When I finally made it to a coalition checkpoint, I was half dead. She paused. They debriefed me, told me the mission was classified, told me the unit was being dissolved, told me I had 2 options. Stay in and get reassigned somewhere I'd never talk about what happened, or take a medical discharge and disappear. So you disappeared. So I disappeared. Cross leaned back, processing. And you've been using the Carter identity ever since. It's not fake. Ava Carter was my mother's maiden name. I just borrowed it. And Mara Finch is dead, officially, legally, in every way that matters. Ava's voice was flat. I don't use that name. I don't think about that life. I'm not her anymore. Cross was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. All right. Ava blinked. All right. I believe you. That's it? That's it. Cross stood. You're not a threat. You're just someone who got burned and didn't want to go back. I've seen it before. Hell, I've thought about it myself. Ava stared at him, not sure if this was a trick. So I can go. You can go. Cross opened the door, held it. But before you do, let me give you some advice. Whatever you're running from, it's still out there, and the longer you hide, the worse it gets when it catches up. So if you ever decide you're done running, you know where to find me. Ava stood slowly, walked to the door, stopped. Why'd you let me go? Cross smiled, just a little. Because I know what it's like to lose people. And I know what it's like to survive when you weren't supposed to. You don't owe anyone an explanation for that. Ava nodded. Then she walked out. She made it halfway across the ER before the alarms started. Not fire alarms, something else. A low, warbling tone that cut through every other sound. Emergency broadcast. The kind that meant something big was happening. Nurses froze, doctors looked up, security moved toward the exits. Then the PA system crackled. All personnel, this is not a drill. We have multiple incoming trauma casualties. Mass casualty incident. Repeat, mass casualty incident. All available staff report to ER immediately. The room exploded into motion. Gurneys wheeled out of storage. Trauma bays prepped. Nurses shouting updates. Hollis emerged from his office, already barking orders, trying to regain control. Ava stood in the middle of it, frozen, as the first ambulance screamed into the bay. The doors burst open. Paramedics rushed in, pushing a gurney with a woman covered in blood. Then another. Then another. Bodies kept coming, a flood of broken people, and the ER staff scrambled to keep up. What happened? Hollis demanded. One of the paramedics, face pale, gasped. Building collapse. Downtown. 12 stories, dozens trapped. These are the first wave. More coming. Hollis went white. He looked around, counting staff, calculating capacity, already seeing the problem. They didn't have enough people. Not for this. Ava watched the chaos, watched nurses struggling to triage, watched residents fumbling with IVs, watched people dying faster than anyone could save them. Then she moved. She walked to the nearest gurney, a man with a crushed leg, conscious but going into shock. She grabbed gloves from a nearby cart, snapped them on, and started working. No hesitation, no permission, just action. A nurse nearby stared. Carter, you don't... I know what I'm doing. And she did. Her hands moved with precision, muscle memory taking over. Tourniquet, pressure, IV line, fluids. Every movement clean, efficient, exactly what the situation needed. The man's vitals stabilized. She moved to the next patient. Hollis saw her, started to say something. Then another wave of casualties came in, and he didn't have time to care. He just watched as Ava, fired, disgraced, supposedly unqualified Ava, worked through patients faster and more effectively than half his senior staff. Cross saw it too. He was still standing near the consultation room, watching. He pulled out his phone, made another call. Yeah, it's me. I need a team at Redwood Bay Medical Center. Full tactical support. Now. He hung up, walked toward the trauma bays, stopped next to Hollis. You're going to need help. Hollis barely looked at him. We're handling it. No, you're not. You've got maybe 30 minutes before you're completely overwhelmed. So you're going to accept my help, and you're going to shut up about it. Hollis opened his mouth to argue. Then another ambulance pulled in. Then another. He looked at Cross, and for the first time that night, he had nothing to say. Cross walked into the fray. His men followed. Within minutes, they'd set up a secondary triage area, organized supply lines, coordinated with incoming ambulances. Military efficiency applied to a civilian disaster. It worked. And in the middle of it all, Ava kept working, patient after patient, hour after hour. She didn't stop, didn't slow, didn't break. Until she heard a voice. Mara. She froze, turned. A man stood at the entrance to the ER, not in fatigues, not in scrubs, just street clothes, worn and dirty, like he'd been traveling. He was maybe 40, dark hair, scar running along his jawline. And he was staring at her like he'd just seen a ghost. Ava's blood went cold. The man took a step forward. It really is you. Ava didn't move. Couldn't. Because she knew that voice, knew that face, knew exactly who he was. Lieutenant Marcus Hale, her commanding officer. The man who'd led the mission in Raqqa. The man who was supposed to be dead. The ER noise faded into background static. Ava couldn't hear the alarms anymore. Couldn't hear the shouting or the rush of gurneys or the controlled chaos that had consumed the room seconds ago. All she could hear was her own heartbeat, loud and irregular, hammering against her ribs like it was trying to break out. Marcus Hale took another step forward. His eyes never left hers. The scar along his jaw was new. She didn't remember that from before, but everything else was exactly the same. The way he held himself, the way his gaze could pin you in place, the way he looked at her now, like he was reading every lie she'd ever told. "Mara," he said again, quieter this time, almost gentle. Ava's hands were still in gloves, still covered in someone else's blood. She peeled them off slowly, deliberately, buying herself time to think. Her throat was dry. "You're dead." "So are you." The words hung between them. A nurse rushed past, shouting something about blood units. Another patient came through the doors on a stretcher, paramedics doing compressions. The world kept moving around them, oblivious. Marcus glanced at the chaos, then back at her. "We need to talk." "No." "Mara, my name is Ava." Her voice was low, sharp. "And I don't know who you think I am, but I was there." Marcus cut her off. "Raka, I saw you go down. I saw the building collapse. I pulled bodies out of that rubble for 3 hours looking for you. And when I couldn't find you, I reported you KIA because that's what I thought you were." Ava's jaw tightened. She could feel eyes on them now, staff members slowing down, noticing the conversation, the tension. Cross was somewhere in the room, probably watching. She needed to end this. Fast. "You made a mistake." "Did I?" "I'm not who you think I am." Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You always were a terrible liar." Before Ava could respond, Hollis appeared, clipboard in hand, face flushed with stress. He looked at Ava, then at Marcus, clearly irritated by the distraction. "Carter, if you're not working, get out. We're at capacity." Ava didn't move. Marcus shifted his attention to Hollis, and something in his expression made the director take a step back. "She's working," Marcus said evenly. "And unless you want to explain to federal investigators why you fired the most qualified trauma medic in this building during a mass casualty event, I'd suggest you let her keep working." Hollis bristled. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone you don't want to piss off." Hollis opened his mouth, but Cross appeared beside him, voice calm. "Dr. Hollis?" A word. Hollis looked between Cross and Marcus, clearly weighing his options, then followed Cross toward the nurses' station. Marcus watched them go, then turned back to Ava. "We're not done." "Yes, we are. I know what you've been doing. I know why you disappeared, and I know you've been running for 8 years thinking you had to." He paused. "You don't." Ava stared at him. "You don't know anything." "I know they blamed you for what happened. I know the report listed you as the reason the mission failed, and I know it was bullshit." The floor felt unsteady. Ava steadied herself against a nearby cart. "How? Because I wrote the real report. The one that never made it past the task force commander. The one that explained exactly who screwed up, and it wasn't you." Ava's breath caught. "What are you talking about?" "Later." Marcus glanced toward the entrance, where more ambulances were pulling in. "Right now you've got patients, so do I." "You're not a doctor." "No, but I'm certified for field trauma, and they need every hand they can get." He stripped off his jacket, grabbed gloves from a supply cart, and headed toward an incoming gurney without waiting for her response. Ava stood there, frozen, trying to process what had just happened. Then a nurse shouted her name, her fake name, and instinct kicked in. She moved, grabbed fresh gloves, went back to work. The next 2 hours blurred together. Ava worked through patient after patient, her hands moving on autopilot while her mind raced. Marcus was somewhere in the chaos, working alongside residents and paramedics like he belonged there. Every time she glanced his direction, he was focused, efficient, saving lives with the same precision she remembered from a lifetime ago. Cross coordinated everything from the center of the room, his men moving like a well-oiled machine. They'd turned the ER into something closer to a forward operating base, organized, controlled, brutal in its efficiency. Hollis tried to reassert authority a few times, but nobody listened. The military had taken over, and everyone knew it. By the time the last critical patient was stabilized, the sun was starting to rise. The ER looked like a war zone, blood on the floors, discarded equipment everywhere, exhausted staff leaning against walls just trying to stay upright. Ava stripped off her gloves and sat down on the edge of a supply cart, legs shaking with fatigue. Marcus appeared beside her, holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one without a word. She took it, didn't drink it. just held it, feeling the warmth seep into her hands. "You're good at this," Marcus said quietly. "I've had practice." "I can tell." He sipped his coffee, staring at the organized chaos around them. "You shouldn't be wasting it in a place like this." "I'm not wasting anything." "Yes, you are. You're hiding." He looked at her. "And I get it. I do. But whatever you think happened back then, whatever you think you're guilty of, I don't want to talk about this." "Too bad, because I came a long way to find you, and I'm not leaving until you hear me out." Ava set down her coffee. "How'd you even find me?" "You used your mother's name. That was sloppy. It's been 8 years. Nobody's been looking." "I've been looking." Marcus's voice was steady. "Since the day I got back stateside. Every database, every hospital registry, every nursing license issued in the last decade. And 2 months ago, your name popped up in Redwood Bay." Ava's chest tightened. "Why?" "Because you deserve to know the truth." Before she could respond, Cross approached, expression unreadable. He looked at Marcus, then at Ava. "We need to talk. All 3 of us." They ended up in the same consultation room where Cross had confronted her hours earlier. This time Marcus was there too, sitting across from her while Cross stood near the door, arms crossed. "So," Cross said, looking at Marcus, "you want to tell me who you are, or do I run your prints?" Marcus didn't flinch. "Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Hale, U.S. Army Special Operations, retired." Cross's expression shifted slightly. Recognition. "You were part of the task force." "I was." "And you know her?" "I do." Cross looked at Ava. "You want to tell me why a retired Special Ops colonel just showed up in my ER looking for you?" Ava didn't answer. Marcus did. "Because she's innocent. And the people who blamed her for Raqqa are still out there, still covering their asses, and still very interested in making sure the truth never comes out." Cross's eyes narrowed. "What truth?" Marcus leaned back in his chair. "The mission in Raqqa was compromised before we ever set foot in Syria. Someone leaked the location of the safe house to hostile forces. When we arrived, it was a setup. 12 of us went in. 3 came out. The official report blamed Lieutenant Finch, and he glanced at Ava, for failing to properly assess the site. Said she missed warning signs, ignored protocol, got people killed. It was a lie." "Who leaked it?" Cross asked. "That's the question, isn't it?" Marcus's voice was hard. "Someone high up, someone with access to classified intel, someone who needed a scapegoat when it all went sideways. And they picked her." Ava's hands were clenched in her lap. "Why are you telling him this?" "Because he needs to know what's coming." Cross straightened. "What's coming?" Marcus looked at him. "You ran her name through military databases tonight. That means someone, somewhere, got flagged. And if they're still paying attention, and I think they are, they know she's here, which means they're going to come looking." The room went silent. Ava felt her stomach drop. "You're wrong." "I'm not. It's been 8 years. Nobody cares anymore." They cared enough to bury the real report. They cared enough to make sure every member of that unit either disappeared or got reassigned to places where they couldn't talk. And they cared enough to declare you dead when they couldn't find your body. Marcus leaned forward. "You think that's because they forgot about you?" Ava didn't answer. Cross pulled out his phone, made a call. It was answered immediately. "I need a security detail at Redwood Bay Medical Center. Now. And I need a secure line to JSOC." He hung up, looked at Marcus. "If what you're saying is true, she's not safe here." "She's not safe anywhere. Not until we figure out who leaked that intel and why they wanted that mission to fail." "And how do you propose we do that?" Marcus smiled, cold. "I've got files, documentation, witness statements from the survivors. Everything I've been sitting on for 8 years waiting for the right moment. I think we just found it." Cross studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "All right, we do this quiet. No official channels, no paper trail, just us." "Agreed." Ava stood up abruptly. "No." Both men looked at her. "No," she said again. "I'm not doing this. I'm not dragging all of that back up. I'm not—" Her voice cracked. "I buried that. I moved on. And I'm not going back." Marcus stood too, slower. "Morris, stop calling me that. You can't run forever. Watch me." She turned toward the door. Cross stepped in front of it. Move, Ava said quietly. Cross didn't. If he's right, you're in danger. And not just you. Everyone in this hospital. Everyone you've worked with. Everyone who knows you. If they're looking for you, they're going to burn everything around you to find you. Ava's hands were shaking now. She shoved them in her pockets. Then I'll leave. I'll disappear again. I've done it before. And how'd that work out? Marcus's voice was gentle, but the words hit hard. You're working a dead-end job under a fake name, barely scraping by, looking over your shoulder every day. That's not living. That's surviving. And I'm offering you a way out. I don't want your way out. Then what do you want? Ava turned to face him, and for the first time since he'd walked into the ER, she let him see the truth. The exhaustion, the fear, the weight of carrying a ghost name for 8 years. I want to be left alone. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay. Cross frowned. Okay? She's right. She didn't ask for this. And if she wants to walk away, that's her choice. Marcus pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket, set it on the table. But if you change your mind, that's where I'll be. 3 days. After that, I'm gone. He walked to the door. Cross stepped aside. Marcus paused in the doorway, looked back at Ava. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it. You deserve better. Then he was gone. Ava stood there staring at the paper on the table. Cross picked it up, glanced at it, then handed it to her. It was an address, a motel on the edge of town. Nothing else. You should consider it, Cross said quietly. I won't. If he's right about them looking for you, he's not. Cross didn't argue. He just opened the door, gestured for her to leave. She did. The ER had quieted down. Most of the critical patients had been transferred to ICU or surgery. The walking wounded had been treated and discharged. Staff was cleaning up, moving like zombies, too tired to talk. Ava walked through the space, heading for the exit, trying to ignore the stares. Hollis intercepted her near the ambulance bay doors. Carter? She stopped. Didn't turn around. I need to know what's going on, Hollis said. Those men, that colonel. What are they doing here? You'd have to ask them. I'm asking you. Ava turned slowly. Hollis looked wrecked, tie gone, shirt wrinkled, circles under his eyes. But there was something else, too. Fear. He was scared. Did you do something? He asked quietly. Is this hospital in danger because of you? Ava felt something cold settle in her chest. No. Then why? I don't know. And I don't care. I did my job. I saved lives. And if that's a problem for you, fire me. Again. She walked out before he could respond. The parking lot was empty except for a few scattered cars, and the black SUVs still parked near the entrance. Ava made it halfway to her car before she heard footsteps behind her. She spun around. Briggs stood there, leaning on a crutch, his dog beside him. Rex's tail wagged once when he saw her. Briggs looked rough, pale, bandages visible under his shirt, moving like every step hurt, but he was upright. You saved his life, Briggs said, nodding at the dog. Ava relaxed slightly. I just bandaged him. No, you did more than that. And I wanted to say thank you, properly. You don't need to, Yes, I do. Briggs took a step closer. I don't know what your story is. Don't need to know. But I know what I saw tonight. You're not just a nurse. You're something else, something better, and whatever you're running from, I hope you find a way to stop. Ava's throat tightened. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Briggs started to turn away, then paused. That guy who was looking for you. The colonel. He seemed like he cared. Just think about it. Then he limped back toward the hospital, Rex padding beside him. Ava stood alone in the parking lot, watching the sky lighten. Her hands were still shaking. She pulled out the piece of paper Marcus had left, stared at the address. She should throw it away. Burn it. Forget it. She folded it carefully and put it back in her pocket. The next 2 days passed in a haze. Ava went back to her apartment, a small, depressing studio on the wrong side of town, and slept for 12 hours straight. When she woke up, she tried to go back to normal. Grocery shopping, laundry, TV shows she didn't care about. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus's face, heard his voice. You deserve to know the truth. On the third day, she found herself driving to the address on the paper. She didn't plan it, didn't make a conscious decision. She just got in her car and her hands knew where to go. The motel was exactly what she expected. Run down, anonymous, the kind of place people went when they didn't want to be found. She parked outside room 12, stared at the door for a long time, then got out of the car. She knocked. The door opened. Marcus stood there, looking like he'd been expecting her. He stepped aside without a word. She walked in. The room was sparse. Single bed, small table covered in files and documents. Laptop open, screen showing what looked like military records. Marcus closed the door behind her, locked it. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "I wasn't sure either." Marcus gestured to the table. "Sit. I'll show you everything." Ava sat. Marcus pulled up a chair across from her, opened one of the files, and started talking. He walked her through it all, the leaked intel, the compromised mission, the cover-up that followed. He had names, dates, communication logs, evidence that someone high in the chain of command had deliberately sabotaged the operation. "Why?" Ava asked, staring at the documents. "Why would anyone do that?" "Because the target we were supposed to extract wasn't just feeding us intel. He was feeding someone else too. And when that someone found out we were coming for him, they made sure we didn't succeed." "Who?" Marcus pulled out a photo. A man in a suit, mid-50s, standing in front of a government building. Deputy Director of Defense Intelligence, name's Raymond Keller. He was running operations in Syria at the time. And according to communication records I shouldn't have access to, he was the one who authorized our mission and the one who leaked our location. Ava felt sick. "Why?" "Money. Power. Take your pick." The asset we were extracting had dirt on him. Evidence of illegal arms deals, funding to prohibited groups, all kinds of nasty stuff. Keller couldn't let that information get out, so he made sure the asset died. And he made sure everyone who went in after him either died too or got silenced. And I was the scapegoat. You were convenient, young, expendable. Easy to blame. Marcus leaned back. But I kept copies of everything. Every report, every communication, every piece of evidence that proved it wasn't your fault. I've been holding on to it, waiting for the right time to bring it forward. Why now? Because Keller's being considered for a promotion, Director of National Intelligence. If he gets that position, he's untouchable. But if we move now, while he's still vulnerable, we can stop him. Ava stared at the files spread across the table. 8 years of evidence. 8 years of truth she'd thought was buried. "What do you need from me?" "Your testimony. You were there. You saw what happened. And if you're willing to go on record..." The window exploded. Glass shattered inward as something small and metallic bounced across the floor. Ava's brain registered what it was half a second before Marcus tackled her. They hit the ground hard as the flashbang detonated. The room went white. Sound disappeared, replaced by a high-pitched ringing. Ava couldn't see, couldn't hear, couldn't think. Marcus was pulling her toward the bathroom, shouting something she couldn't make out. Then the door burst open and shapes moved through the smoke. 3, maybe 4, dressed in black tactical gear, weapons raised. Marcus shoved her into the bathroom, slammed the door. Ava's vision was starting to clear, the ringing fading enough to hear muffled gunfire. She looked around frantically. Small window above the toilet. Too small for Marcus, but maybe... The bathroom door splintered. Someone kicked it open. A man stepped through, gun trained on her. Ava froze. The man reached for her, and that's when the second explosion hit. This one from outside. The whole motel shook. The man stumbled. Ava moved on instinct, grabbed the bathroom trash can, swung it at his head. He went down. She grabbed his gun, had no idea how to use it, dropped it, and scrambled for the window instead. She got it open, pulled herself through, dropped onto gravel outside. The parking lot was chaos. More black SUVs, men with guns, Cross's team engaging with whoever had just stormed the motel. Ava ran. Didn't know where. Just ran. Someone grabbed her from behind. She spun, ready to fight. Marcus. Blood running down his face, shirt torn, but alive. He pulled her toward a car, his car, shoved her in the passenger seat, and floored it. They peeled out of the parking lot as bullets shattered the rear window. Marcus drove like he was back in a combat zone. Fast, erratic, taking turns that threw Ava against the door. She couldn't breathe, couldn't process, just held onto the dashboard and tried not to scream. "What the hell was that?" she gasped. "Keller's people. They found us." "How?" "I don't know. But they're not stopping until we're both dead." He took another turn, nearly sideswiped a truck, kept going. Ava looked back. 2 vehicles were following, gaining fast. "We can't outrun them," she said. "I know." Marcus pulled out his phone, tossed it to her. "Call Cross. Last number in the log. Tell him we need an extraction." Ava fumbled with the phone, found the number, hit call. It rang twice before Cross answered. "Talk to me." "It's Ava. Marcus and I are being followed. They attacked the motel. We need—" "Where are you?" Marcus shouted the cross streets. Ava repeated them. "Stay on the line," Cross said. "We're coming." The rear window shattered completely. Ava ducked as bullets tore through the car. Marcus swerved, nearly lost control, corrected. His hands were tight on the wheel, jaw set, eyes focused. "They're trying to run us off the road," Ava said. "I noticed." Another barrage of gunfire. The side mirror exploded. Marcus jerked the wheel hard right, cut through a gas station parking lot, back onto the street. The pursuing vehicles followed, relentless. Then Ava heard it. Helicopters. She looked up. 2 military choppers appeared overhead, moving fast. Cross's voice crackled through the phone. "We've got visual. Hold your position." "We're kind of busy," Ava shouted. One of the choppers descended, positioning itself between Marcus's car and the pursuers. The other circled around, cutting off their escape route. The vehicles following them slowed, then stopped. Didn't retreat, just stopped. Marcus kept driving. Didn't slow down until they were 5 miles clear and the helicopters were still visible in the distance. Then he pulled into an abandoned lot, killed the engine, and sat there, breathing hard. Ava was shaking. She looked at him. "What just happened?" Marcus stared at the steering wheel. Keller just declared war. His phone buzzed. Cross's voice came through, clipped. "You two alive?" "For now," Marcus said. "Good. Because we've got a bigger problem. The men who just tried to kill you, they're not mercenaries, they're active duty operators. Which means Keller didn't just send hired guns, he sent military assets on U.S. soil." Marcus closed his eyes. "He's that scared. Or that connected. Either way, you're not safe. Neither of you. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to meet me at the coordinates I'm sending, and we're going to figure out how to end this before it gets worse." The phone went dead. A text came through. "Coordinates." Marcus showed them to Ava. She looked at him. "What if we just run? Leave the country? Disappear for real this time?" Marcus met her eyes. "Then Keller wins, and everyone who died in Raqqa died for nothing." Ava's hands were still shaking. She pressed them against her knees. "I'm scared." "Me too." "But you're still going." "Yeah." Ava looked out the shattered window at the empty lot, the distant helicopters, the world that had just turned hostile again. She thought about the ER, the patients she'd saved, the life she'd tried to build. All of it was gone now, burned, just like before. She looked at Marcus. "Let's go." He started the car. They drove toward the coordinates, toward whatever was waiting, toward a fight Ava had spent 8 years trying to avoid. And somewhere behind them, in the wreckage of the motel room, a phone rang. A voice answered, cold, controlled. "Did you get them?" "No, sir," Cross's people intervened. A long silence. "Then escalate. I want them both dead by morning. I don't care what it takes." The line went dead. And in a government office 2,000 miles away, Deputy Director Raymond Keller stood at his window, staring at the city below, and made a single phone call that would bring everything crashing down. The warehouse sat at the edge of an industrial zone where nothing moved after dark, except rats and the occasional patrol car that never stopped long enough to matter. Marcus pulled the battered car behind a rusted shipping container and killed the engine. The silence that followed felt wrong. Too complete. Like the world was holding its breath. Ava's ears were still ringing from the gunfire. She touched her face, found dried blood that wasn't hers. Her hands had finally stopped shaking, but only because she'd clenched them so tight her nails had drawn crescents in her palms. "You okay?" Marcus asked. "No?" "Good. Means you're paying attention." He got out first, scanned the area, then gestured for her to follow. They moved quickly across open ground, keeping low, heading toward a service entrance where a single figure stood waiting. Cross. He wasn't alone. 4 of his men flanked the door, rifles held in low ready positions, eyes sweeping the perimeter. Cross watched them approach, expression unreadable. When they got close enough, he spoke quietly. "You're bleeding." Marcus wiped at his face. "Not my blood." "All of it?" "Most of it." Cross looked at Ava. She must have looked worse than she felt because his jaw tightened. "You hurt?" "I'm fine." "That wasn't what I asked." Ava met his eyes. "I'm not hurt." Cross nodded once, then turned and led them inside. The warehouse was mostly empty, concrete floors, exposed beams, shadows pooling in corners where the overhead lights didn't reach. In the center, someone had set up a tactical operations area. Folding tables covered with laptops and communication equipment. Portable generators humming, maps spread across every available surface. Briggs was there, leaning against a table, his dog lying at his feet. The bandages were gone, replaced with fresh wrapping. He looked up when they entered, nodded at Ava. Rex's tail thumped once against the floor. "Didn't expect to see you again so soon," Briggs said. "Makes 2 of us," Ava replied. 3 other men were present, all military, all watching Marcus and Ava with the kind of attention that made her skin crawl. Cross gestured to them. "My team. They know the situation. They're here to help." "Help how?" Marcus asked. Cross walked to one of the tables, pulled up a laptop, turned it so they could see. The screen showed a live news feed. The headline read, "Federal Building Lockdown After Security Threat." Below it, footage of armed personnel surrounding a government office in Washington, D.C. "Keller's moving," Cross said. "He knows you've got evidence. He knows you're alive, and he's mobilizing every asset he's got to make sure you stay quiet." Marcus leaned closer to the screen. "How bad?" "He's claiming there's a credible terrorist threat. Got Homeland Security scrambling, FBI on standby. He's using the system to cover his tracks while he sends kill teams after you." Cross looked at them both. "You understand what that means? He's not just connected, he's controlling the narrative. And if he gets to you before we can expose him, he'll spin it however he wants. You'll be the terrorists, the traitors, and nobody will question it." Ava felt the weight of it settle over her like a physical thing. "So what do we do?" "We go public," Marcus said. "Release everything. The files, the evidence, all of it. Put it out there where he can't bury it." Cross shook his head. "Won't work. He'll just claim it's fabricated, disinformation. And with his clearance level, he can classify anything that contradicts his version of events. By the time anyone sorts through it, you'll both be dead." "Then what?" Ava's voice came out harsher than she intended. "We just sit here and wait for him to send more people to kill us?" "No." Cross straightened. "We force his hand. We make him come out into the open where he can't hide behind classifications and security protocols. We make him defend himself publicly." Marcus frowned. "How?" Cross pulled up another screen. This one showed a schedule. Congressional hearings, confirmation proceedings, and right there, 3 days from now, Deputy Director Raymond Keller, Director of National Intelligence Confirmation Hearing. "He's going to testify in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee," Cross said. "Open session, cameras, public record. If we can get your evidence in front of that committee before he testifies, he won't be able to classify his way out of it." "And how do we get evidence in front of a Senate committee?" Ava asked. Cross smiled, sharp and cold. "We have friends in interesting places." One of Cross's men spoke up, a lean guy with a scar across his knuckles. "Senator Patricia Vance. She's on the Intelligence Committee. She's also been asking questions about Syria operations for the last 2 years. Questions that keep getting stonewalled." Marcus looked at Cross. "You think she'll listen?" "I think she'll jump at the chance to take Keller apart if we give her the ammunition." Cross closed the laptop. "But we need to get the evidence to her, and we need to do it without Keller knowing until it's too late." Ava glanced at Marcus. "Where are the files?" "Safe deposit box, different bank, different state." "How far?" "Virginia. 4-hour drive." Cross checked his watch. "Then we move now. Keller's people will be watching every federal building, every airport, every major route. We've got a narrow window before they lock down the entire eastern seaboard looking for you." Briggs pushed off from the table. I'm going with them. Cross turned. You're injured. I can shoot. You can barely walk. Then I'll shoot sitting down. Briggs' voice was flat. They saved my dog's life. Saved mine, too. I'm not sitting this out. Cross looked like he wanted to argue, then nodded. Fine. But you follow orders, and if you slow us down, you're out. Briggs didn't respond, just checked his sidearm and started toward the door. Rex stood, stretched, and followed. Marcus looked at Ava. You don't have to come. You can stay here. We'll get the files and… No. Ava, I said no. She met his eyes. This is my fight now, too. I'm not hiding anymore. Marcus held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded. All right, let's move. They left in 2 vehicles, a nondescript van with Cross driving and 3 of his men inside, and an SUV with Marcus at the wheel, Ava beside him, Briggs and Rex in the back. They took different routes out of the city, planned to converge outside Richmond. The first hour passed in tense silence. Ava watched the road, watched the mirrors, watched for anything that didn't belong. Marcus drove carefully, staying just under the speed limit, taking routes that avoided toll cameras and main highways. You ever think about what happens after? Ava asked quietly. Marcus glanced at her. After what? After we expose Keller. After the hearings. After everything's out in the open. I try not to. Why not? Because if I think too far ahead, I start seeing all the ways this goes wrong. He adjusted his grip on the wheel. Better to focus on right now, right here, one step at a time. Ava looked out the window at the dark landscape rolling past. I don't know how to go back to normal after this. Maybe you don't. Maybe normal's not the point anymore. Then what is? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Making sure what happened to us doesn't happen to anyone else. Making sure the people who died in Raqqa didn't die so some bureaucrat could cover his ass. In the back, Briggs spoke up. That's a hell of a mission statement. Marcus smiled grimly. Best I've got. They crossed into Virginia just after midnight. Marcus's phone buzzed, a text from Cross with coordinates for a rest stop 10 miles ahead. They pulled in, parked near a semi-truck, and waited. 5 minutes later, the van appeared. Cross got out, walked over. We're clear so far. No tails, no alerts. He leaned against the SUV. But Keller's people are getting aggressive. They hit another location an hour ago, a storage unit registered under one of your old aliases. Marcus stiffened. How'd they find it? Someone's feeding them information, which means either they've got access to classified databases or there's still someone inside the task force feeding them intel. Marcus's voice went cold. Just like Raqqa. Cross nodded. That's what I'm thinking, which means we can't trust official channels, can't trust secure communications. We're on our own. Story of my life, Marcus muttered. They drove on. The bank was in a small town outside Richmond, the kind of place where nothing ever happened and everyone knew everyone else's business. They arrived just before dawn, parked 2 blocks away, and waited for the bank to open. Ava watched the street. A few cars passed, a jogger, a woman walking a dog. Everything looked normal. That's what scared her. This feels wrong, she said. Marcus nodded. Yeah. So why are we still sitting here? Because we don't have a choice. At 9 a.m., the bank's lights came on. Marcus grabbed a backpack from the back seat, looked at Ava. Stay here. Not a chance. Ava, we've been over this. I'm not staying behind. Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, then sighed. Fine, but stay close. And if anything goes sideways, you run. Understand? I understand. They got out. Briggs stayed with the vehicle, Rex alert beside him. Cross and his men took up positions around the block, out of sight, but ready. Marcus and Ava walked into the bank like they belonged there. The interior was small, dated. Teller windows on one side, a desk for loan officers on the other, a vault door in the back. A woman behind the desk looked up, smiled politely. Can I help you? Marcus approached. I need to access my safe deposit box. Of course. Do you have your key? He pulled it from his pocket. The woman led them to the vault, verified his ID, fake but good enough, and opened the gate. Marcus found his box, pulled it out, carried it to a private viewing room. Ava followed. He opened the box. Inside were 3 thick folders, multiple USB drives, and a handgun. Marcus pulled out the folders first, flipped through them quickly, checking contents. His expression tightened. "What?" Ava asked. "Some of this is missing." "What do you mean, missing?" "Documents, pages. Someone's been through this." He looked at her, and she saw fear in his eyes for the first time. Someone knew. Before she could respond, gunfire erupted outside. Ava dropped instinctively. Marcus grabbed the folders, shoved them in the backpack, grabbed the gun. They moved to the door. Through the small window, Ava could see chaos, the bank lobby, people screaming, running. The teller window shattered. More gunfire. Marcus checked the hallway. Clear. He pulled Ava out of the viewing room, moving fast toward a rear exit. Behind them, the vault door slammed shut. Someone had triggered the security lockdown. They were trapped between the vault and whatever was happening in the lobby. "This way." Marcus led her down a service corridor, past storage rooms, toward a door marked emergency exit. He hit the release bar. Alarm blared. They burst out into an alley. Cross was there, rifle up, firing controlled bursts toward the front of the building. His men were spread out, engaging multiple targets. Briggs had the SUV running, rear door open. Rex was barking, a deep, aggressive sound. "Move!" Cross shouted. Marcus and Ava ran. Bullets stitched the wall beside them. They dove into the SUV. Briggs floored it before the door was fully closed. They fishtailed out of the alley onto the main street, weaving through morning traffic. Behind them, two vehicles gave chase. Black sedans, windows down, weapons visible. "How many?" Marcus shouted. Briggs checked the mirror. 4, maybe 5, professional, coordinated. Keller's contractors. Or worse. More gunfire. The rear window spiderwebbed but held. Ava pressed herself low, heard Marcus returning fire, controlled 3-round bursts. One of the pursuing sedans swerved, dropped back. The other kept coming. Briggs took a hard right, cut through a residential area, trying to lose them. The sedan followed, relentless. Rex was still barking, and Briggs shouted at him to quiet down. The dog did, but stayed tense, hackles up. They burst back onto a main road. A third vehicle appeared from a side street, cutting them off. Briggs jerked the wheel, jumped the curb, tore through a parking lot. The pursuing vehicles followed. This wasn't just a chase anymore. It was a coordinated assault. Marcus's phone rang. He answered, put it on speaker. Cross's voice came through, strained. "We're pinned down. They've got reinforcements. You need to get clear." "We're trying." "No, I mean clear. Out of the state. Out of the region. They're going full scorched earth." An explosion somewhere behind them. Ava twisted around, saw smoke rising from the direction of the bank. Briggs cursed, pushed the SUV harder. "Where do we go?" Ava shouted over the noise. Marcus looked at the backpack full of evidence. "DC, we go straight to the senator right now." "That's suicide," Briggs said. "It's the only play we've got left." Another vehicle joined the chase, then another. They were multiplying, like Keller had an entire army waiting. Maybe he did. Briggs took an on-ramp, merged onto the highway, pushed the SUV to 90. The pursuing vehicles kept pace. Traffic scattered. Ava heard sirens now, police probably responding to the bank. This was spiraling out of control. Marcus made a call. It rang 4 times before someone answered. Senator Vance's office. "I need to speak to the senator. Right now. It's urgent." "I'm sorry, but the senator is in session. If you'd like to leave a..." "Tell her it's about Raymond Keller. Tell her I have proof he leaked classified intelligence that got 12 soldiers killed. Tell her I'll be at her office in 2 hours. And tell her if she doesn't see me, all of that proof goes to the press instead." Silence on the other end. Then, "Hold, please." The line went quiet. Marcus kept the phone pressed to his ear, eyes on the road ahead. One of the pursuing vehicles pulled alongside them. The window rolled down. Ava saw the barrel of a rifle. "Left side!" she screamed. Briggs swerved right as the rifle fired. Bullets punched through the door panel, missed Ava by inches. Marcus leaned out his window, returned fire. The sedan dropped back, but 2 more took its place. The phone crackled. A woman's voice, crisp and authoritative. "This is Senator Vance. Who am I speaking to?" "Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Hale, former Special Operations." "I know who you are, Colonel. I've read the reports. The official ones. What makes you think I'll believe anything different?" "Because I have the real reports, the ones that got buried." And I have a witness, Lieutenant Mara Finch. She was there. She survived. And she's ready to testify. Another pause. Ava could almost hear the senator calculating, weighing risks. Where are you right now? On the highway, heading toward D.C., with about 6 vehicles trying to kill us. Jesus Christ. So do we have a meeting or not? My office. 2 hours. I'll have security waiting, but Colonel, if this is some kind of setup, it's not. Then I'll see you in 2 hours. Don't be late. The line went dead. Marcus looked at Briggs. Can we make it? If we don't die first. They drove harder. The pursuing vehicles didn't let up. This wasn't about capture anymore. It was about elimination. Keller had given the order, kill them, destroy the evidence, make it all go away. But they were close now. Close enough that Ava could see the possibility of actually making it, of walking into that senator's office, of ending this. Then the helicopter appeared. It came from the north, flying low, black and unmarked. Military grade. It pulled ahead of them, turned, hovered over the highway. Cars started pulling over, confused, scared. The helicopter descended until it was maybe 50 feet above the road. Briggs slowed. We can't outrun that. I know. The helicopter's side door opened. A man leaned out, rifle in hand. Not aimed. Not yet. Just visible. A warning. Marcus's phone rang again. Unknown number. He answered. A voice came through. Cold. Controlled. Familiar from the recordings Ava had heard in the motel room. Raymond Keller. Colonel Hale. I'm impressed. You've made it farther than I expected. Marcus said nothing. But this ends now. You're going to pull over. You're going to hand over whatever evidence you think you have. And you're going to walk away. I'll even let you live. New identities, new lives. You disappear. I forget you exist. Not interested. Then you're going to die. And so is she. And so is everyone who's helped you. I will burn your entire world to the ground. Marcus looked at Ava. She stared back, saw him silently asking the question. She nodded once. Marcus spoke into the phone. You know what your problem is, Keller? You think everyone's scared of you. You think throwing enough power around makes you invincible. But you've already lost. Have I? Yeah. Because we're 10 minutes from D.C., we've got an appointment with Senator Vance in less than 2 hours. And everything you've done, every lie you've told, every person you've killed, it's all documented. It's all ready to go public. And there's not a damn thing you can do to stop it. Silence. Then Keller's voice came back, quieter, more dangerous. You're bluffing. Try me. The helicopter started to descend. The rifleman took aim. And then everything happened at once. Cross's van appeared from an on-ramp behind them, slamming into one of the pursuing sedans, sending it spinning into the concrete barrier. 2 more military vehicles appeared ahead, friendlies judging by the way they positioned themselves between the SUV and the helicopter. And somewhere in the chaos, Briggs saw an opening and took it, gunning the engine, pushing through the gap. The helicopter tried to follow. One of the friendly vehicles fired, not at the helicopter, but across its path. A warning. The helicopter pulled up, banking away. They were through. Clear road ahead. The pursuing vehicles were blocked behind by Cross's team and the reinforcements. They'd made it. Briggs laughed, a half-crazed sound. Holy shit, we actually made it. Marcus didn't look relieved. He was staring at the backpack, at the evidence inside. Not yet. They drove straight to the Hart Senate office building. Security was waiting. Capitol Police, Secret Service. Someone had made calls. They were escorted inside, past checkpoints, through corridors that smelled like old carpet and power. Senator Vance met them in a conference room. She was mid-60s, sharp eyes, the kind of presence that made you stand straighter without meaning to. She looked at Marcus, then at Ava, then at the backpack. Show me, she said. Marcus opened it, laid out the folders, the USB drives, everything he'd been carrying for 8 years. Vance started reading. Her expression didn't change much, but Ava saw her jaw tighten, saw her hands clench when she reached certain pages. After 20 minutes, she looked up. This is explosive. That's why people have been trying to kill us for it, Marcus said. If even half of this is verified. It's all verified. I've got corroborating testimony, communication logs, witness statements from survivors. It's airtight. Vance closed the folder, looked at Ava. You were there, in Raqqa. Yes. And you're willing to testify? Ava's throat was tight. She thought about the last 8 years, the running, the hiding, the weight of carrying someone else's guilt. She looked at Marcus. He gave her a small nod. Yes, Ava said. I'll testify. Vance stood. Then we have work to do. The confirmation hearing is in 2 days. I'm going to move heaven and earth to get you in front of that committee. And when I do, you're going to tell them everything. Marcus stood too. What about Keller? He's going to come after us. Let him try. Vance's voice was steel. You're under federal protection now. He so much as looks at you wrong, I'll bury him myself. They were moved to a secure location, a safe house somewhere in Virginia, guarded by federal agents and military personnel. Ava barely slept. When she did, she dreamed of Raqqa, of buildings collapsing, of people screaming. She woke up gasping, found Marcus sitting at the kitchen table going through the files again. Can't sleep either, she asked. No. She sat across from him. What happens if this doesn't work? If they don't believe us? Then we go to the press. We go to international media. We keep pushing until someone listens. And if nobody listens? Marcus looked at her. Then at least we tried. At least we didn't spend the rest of our lives running. The next day passed in preparation. Lawyers briefing them. Vance's staff running through testimony procedures. Security sweeps and threat assessments. The confirmation hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. the following morning. Keller would testify first. Then, if Vance could make it happen, Ava and Marcus would get their chance. That night, Cross showed up at the safe house. He looked exhausted, but there was something satisfied in his expression. We got him, Cross said. Marcus looked up. Got who? The leak. The person feeding Keller information about your movements. Cross pulled out a tablet, showed them a photo. A woman in a military uniform. Major Sarah Kendrick. She was part of the Syria task force. She's been on Keller's payroll for 6 years. Ava felt sick. She was one of us. She was, and she gave up 12 people to save her own career. Cross put the tablet away. She's in federal custody now, singing like a bird. Everything she's told us corroborates your evidence. Marcus leaned back in his chair. So we really have him. Yeah, we really do. But Ava couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong, that Keller had one more move left. She looked at Cross. What's he doing right now? Keller? Probably getting his story straight for tomorrow. No, I mean really. What's he doing? Cross hesitated. We don't know. He's gone dark. No communications, no movements. He's holed up somewhere we can't track. Ava stood, walked to the window, looked out at the darkness. He's planning something. He knows we're coming. He knows what we have. And he's not the kind of person who goes down without a fight. Marcus joined her. Neither are we. The morning of the hearing arrived cold and clear. Ava dressed in clothes someone had provided, professional, anonymous. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. This wasn't Mara Finch, the soldier. Wasn't Ava Carter, the nurse. This was someone new. Someone who'd stopped running. They were driven to Capitol Hill in an armored vehicle. Security was everywhere. Vance met them at the entrance, flanked by staff. Keller's already inside, she said. He's testifying right now. We're going in through the back. When he's done, I'm calling you both as surprise witnesses. It's going to cause chaos, but that's the point. We need him off balance. They walked through marble corridors, past tourists and press and people who had no idea what was about to happen. Finally, they reached the hearing room. Vance opened the door quietly. Inside, rows of seats faced a raised panel where senators sat. And there, at the witness table, was Raymond Keller. He looked exactly like his photos. Distinguished, confident, the kind of man who'd spent his career convincing people he was on their side. He was mid-answer to a question, something about operational security. His voice was smooth, practiced. Ava watched him, felt rage building in her chest. This was the man who'd killed her friends, who'd destroyed her life, who'd spent 8 years making sure the truth stayed buried. Vance led them to seats at the back. They sat, waited. Keller finished his answer. The committee chair thanked him, started to move on to the next topic. That's when Vance stood. Mr. Chairman, I have an urgent matter. The chair looked annoyed. Senator Vance, I have two witnesses who can speak directly to Deputy Director Keller's actions in Syria, and I believe the committee needs to hear their testimony before we proceed with this confirmation. The room went silent. Keller's head turned. His eyes swept the room, found Ava and Marcus. For just a second, his composure slipped. Then it was back, smooth as glass. Mr. Chairman, Keller said calmly, I have no idea what Senator Vance is referring to. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Hale and Lieutenant Mara Finch, Vance said loudly. Survivors of the Raqqa operation that Deputy Director Keller oversaw. They're here. They're ready to testify, and I move that we hear them right now. The chair looked at Keller. Keller's jaw was tight. Mr. Chairman, this is highly irregular. These individuals have no clearance to discuss classified operations in an open hearing. Then we'll go into closed session, Vance shot back. But we're going to hear what they have to say. The room erupted. Senators arguing, staff whispering, press in the gallery leaning forward. The chair banged his gavel. Order. We'll take a 15-minute recess to sort this out. Keller stood, walked toward the exit. As he passed Ava and Marcus, he stopped, looked at them. His voice was barely a whisper. You just signed your death warrants. Then he was gone. The recess stretched to 30 minutes, then an hour. Ava sat in a side room with Marcus, waiting while lawyers and senators argued procedure. Finally, Vance appeared. We're going into closed session. No press, no public, just the committee. You'll testify under oath, and then we'll see what happens. They were led back into the hearing room. It was mostly empty now, just the senators, a handful of essential staff, a court reporter. Keller sat at the witness table, stone-faced. Marcus testified first. He walked through everything, the mission, the leak, the cover-up. He presented documents, read from communication logs, named names. The senators listened, some skeptical, some horrified. Then it was Ava's turn. She sat at the table, placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. And then she started talking about Raqqa, about watching her friends die, about crawling through rubble, bleeding, knowing she was going to die, about surviving when she wasn't supposed to. And she looked directly at Keller while she did it. His expression never changed, but she saw it in his eyes. He knew he was finished. When she was done, the committee chair asked Keller if he had a response. Keller stood, buttoned his jacket. Everything these individuals have said is fabricated, lies designed to undermine my confirmation. I have served this country for 30 years. I have protected its interests, and I will not be smeared by conspiracy theories and forged documents. Vance stood. Then you won't mind if we bring in Major Sarah Kendrick to corroborate their testimony. Keller went pale. Who? Your accomplice. The one who's been feeding you information. The one who's currently in federal custody. Shall I call her? The room was silent. Keller looked at the committee, at the senators watching him, at Ava. And for the first time, she saw him break. This hearing is over, he said quietly. Then louder. This hearing is over. He walked out. Security moved to stop him. He pushed past them. By the time anyone reacted, he was gone. Chaos erupted. Senators shouting for Capitol Police, staff on phones. Vance grabbed Ava and Marcus. Stay close to me, this isn't done yet. They rushed through corridors surrounded by security. Ava's heart was pounding. They'd done it. They'd exposed him. But Keller was loose, cornered, desperate. They made it outside. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the Capitol steps. Security was everywhere, searching for Keller. Then Ava's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Keller's voice came through, strained. You think you've won. Where are you? You've destroyed me. My career? My life. Everything I built. You destroyed yourself. No. His voice hardened. You did, and now you're going to pay for it. The line went dead. Ava looked at Marcus. He's going to... The explosion tore through the evening air. Not close, but visible. A fireball rising from somewhere in the city. Sirens immediately started wailing. Security pushed them toward vehicles, shouting orders. Cross appeared, running. That was the federal building, where they're holding Kendrick. Ava felt ice in her veins. He just killed his own accomplice and destroyed the evidence she was going to provide. Cross grabbed his radio. We need to... Another explosion, closer this time. The ground shook, and Ava realized with horrible clarity what Keller was doing. He wasn't running. He was burning everything down. The second explosion sent security scrambling. Ava was shoved into an armored SUV before she could process what was happening. Marcus landed beside her, Cross in the front seat barking orders into his radio. The vehicle tore away from the Capitol steps, tires screeching. "Where's it coming from?" Marcus shouted. Cross listened to the chatter flooding his earpiece. Federal detention facility, southeast, where they were holding Kendrick. He looked back at them. She's gone. Buildings partially collapsed, at least a dozen casualties. Ava felt numb. He killed her to silence her and to destroy whatever testimony she'd already given. Cross's jaw was tight. But he's not done. That was just the opening move. The SUV weaved through panicked traffic. Every emergency vehicle in the city seemed to be converging on the same area. Police cars, fire trucks, ambulances. The radio crackled with overlapping reports, suspicious packages, evacuation orders, unconfirmed threats across multiple government buildings. Marcus pulled out his phone, tried calling Senator Vance. No answer. He tried again. Still nothing. "She's in lockdown," Cross said. "Entire Capitol complex is sealed. Nobody in or out until they clear the threats." "How many threats are there?" Ava asked. "Too many, which means most of them are fake. Keller's creating chaos. Makes it easier to move, harder to track him." The SUV turned sharply, heading away from the detention facility toward a different destination. Ava grabbed the seat. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere we can regroup, figure out his next move before he makes it." They pulled into an underground parking garage beneath a nondescript office building. Cross led them through security doors, up a service elevator, into a room that looked like a makeshift command center. Screens covered one wall, showing news feeds, security footage, tactical maps. 3 of Cross's men were already there, working computers, coordinating with someone over encrypted channels. Briggs was there too, standing near a window, Rex lying at his feet. He turned when they entered. "They're saying it's a coordinated terrorist attack." "It's one man," Marcus said. "One desperate man with access to resources he shouldn't have." Briggs gestured to the screens. "One man did all that?" The news footage showed the detention facility, smoke pouring from the upper floors, emergency responders pulling people from rubble. The death count was climbing. Kendrick's face appeared on screen, identified as one of the victims. Ava stared at the image. A woman she'd never met. Someone who'd betrayed everything Ava had believed in, and now she was dead, silenced before she could make it right. "He's erasing evidence," Ava said quietly. "What else can he hit?" Marcus was already thinking the same thing. He looked at Cross. "The safe deposit box. The bank where we got the files. Did you secure it?" Cross's expression darkened. "Team was dispatched an hour ago. They haven't checked in." Marcus grabbed Cross's phone, pulled up the contact, hit dial. It rang. And rang. No answer. "Damn it!" Marcus started pacing. "He's hitting everything, every piece of evidence, every witness. He's burning it all." One of Cross's men spoke up. "Sir, we've got movement. Traffic cameras picked up a vehicle matching Keller's last known, heading northwest out of the city." Cross moved to the screens. "Where northwest?" The man pulled up a map, traced a route. "Based on trajectory, looks like he's heading toward Dulles." "Airport," Briggs said. "He's running." "No." Ava was staring at the map, something clicking in her mind. "No, that's not right. He's not running. He's going somewhere specific." Marcus looked at her. "What do you mean?" "Think about it. He just blew up a federal building, killed a witness in custody. Every agency in the country is looking for him. He can't get on a plane, can't cross borders. So why head to an airport?" Cross caught on. "Unless he's not trying to leave. Unless there's something at the airport he needs." The man at the computer was already pulling up files. "Dulles has a cargo facility, handles classified government shipments, military equipment, sensitive materials." "What kind of materials?" Marcus asked. The man scrolled through manifests, stopped. Chemical agents, biological samples, transported under DoD contracts. He looked up. Some of those contracts were authorized by Keller's office. The room went cold. Cross grabbed his radio. I need teams at Dulles International. Cargo facility. Possible hostile with access to hazardous materials. Lock it down? Now. He turned to Marcus and Ava. If he gets his hands on something from that facility, he'll use it, Marcus finished. He's already killed a dozen people. What's a few hundred more if it covers his tracks? They moved fast, cross-coordinated with FBI, Homeland Security, airport police. But the bureaucracy was slowing everything down. Jurisdictional disputes, chain of command issues, protocols that weren't designed for a deputy director going rogue. By the time anyone could mobilize a proper response, Keller would be long gone. Cross made a decision. We go ourselves. Fast and quiet. My team. No official channels. Vance called while they were loading into vehicles. Her voice was strained. The committee is in chaos. Half of them think Keller's a hero being framed. The other half want him arrested immediately. And I can't get anyone to authorize a warrant because nobody knows who to trust. We're going after him, Marcus said. Unofficially? Does it matter? Vance was quiet for a moment. If you're wrong about this, if he's not at Dulles, if he's not planning what you think he's planning, this ends your credibility. Everything you testified to will be dismissed as paranoia. And if we're right, then stop him, whatever it takes. They drove to Dulles with lights and sirens, Cross's credentials getting them through checkpoints that would have stopped anyone else. The cargo facility was on the far side of the airport, away from terminals, surrounded by fencing and security gates. They pulled up to the main entrance. A guard stepped out, hand on his sidearm. Cross showed his ID. We need access, now. The guard checked the ID, looked at the vehicles, counted the armed personnel. I'm going to need authorization from... There's no time. We have credible intel that someone unauthorized is attempting to access classified materials. You want to be the guy who let that happen? The guard hesitated, then keyed his radio. Spoke quietly, waited, finally nodded and opened the gate. They drove through, parked near the main building. The facility was massive, warehouses, loading docks, security stations. Cross split his team. 2-man units, cover every entrance. If you see Keller, do not engage alone. Call it in. Briggs stayed with the vehicles, monitoring communications. Rex was alert, sensing the tension. Marcus, Ava, and Cross moved toward the central warehouse, where manifests indicated the most sensitive materials were stored. The door was ajar. Cross signaled his men. They stacked up, weapons ready. Entered fast. The warehouse was dim, lit by overhead fixtures that hummed and flickered. Rows of containers stretched into the distance. Everything was labeled, coded, organized, and somewhere in the maze, Keller was moving. They advanced slowly, checking corners, clearing lanes. Ava's heart hammered. She wasn't armed, wasn't trained for this kind of situation, but she stayed close to Marcus, trusting him to keep her alive. A sound ahead, metallic, someone working with tools. Cross motioned for silence. They crept forward. Around a corner, behind a stack of crates, they saw him. Keller was dressed in maintenance coveralls, hat pulled low, gloves on. He was working on a container, large, marked with biohazard symbols. The lock was already broken. He was opening it. Cross stepped out, rifle raised. Keller, don't move. Keller froze. Slowly turned. His face was pale, haggard, nothing like the composed man who'd testified that morning. He looked like someone who'd already accepted his fate. Colonel Cross. Keller's voice was flat. I should have known you'd figure it out. Step away from the container. Keller looked at it. You know what's in here? Anthrax. Military grade. Enough to contaminate half the city if it's released properly. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Insurance policy, in case the enemy ever got too close. You're not releasing anything, Cross said. You're going to step away, put your hands up, and come with us. Why? So I can stand trial, spend the rest of my life in prison, watch everything I built get torn apart by people who don't understand the sacrifices I made? You didn't make sacrifices, Ava said, stepping forward despite Marcus trying to pull her back. You murdered people. You betrayed soldiers who trusted you, and you blamed me for it. Keller looked at her, really looked at her. Lieutenant Finch, the ghost. You know, I actually thought you were dead, made things easier. Then you had to survive. That's what I do. Apparently. Keller glanced at the container. You want to know the truth? The real truth? That mission in Raqqa wasn't supposed to succeed. The asset we were extracting, he wasn't an asset. He was a liability. He knew too much. About me. About operations we ran that Congress would never approve. So I made sure he didn't make it out. And I made sure the people sent to get him couldn't contradict my version of events. Marcus's voice was cold. You killed 12 soldiers to cover your crimes. I protected national security. You protected yourself. Keller shrugged. Semantics. He turned back to the container, started opening it wider. Cross took a step forward. Keller, I will shoot you. No, you won't, because if I go down, this container comes with me, and everyone in this facility dies. Everyone in the surrounding area. You willing to risk that? Cross didn't lower his weapon. You're bluffing. Am I? Keller pulled out a device, small, cylindrical, with a digital display. A dispersal mechanism. One button. That's all it takes. I press it, and this becomes a hot zone. The standoff stretched. Ava could see Cross calculating, weighing options. Could he take the shot before Keller pressed the button? Would the risk be worth it? Then Ava heard something. Footsteps. Multiple. Coming from behind them. She turned. Men in tactical gear, but not Cross's team. Different uniforms. Different insignia. Cross saw them too. Kept his weapon on Keller, but shifted his stance. Who are they? One of the men stepped forward. Older, graying, stars on his collar. A general. Stand down, Colonel. All of you. Cross didn't move. General Brixton, what are you doing here? Brixton gestured to his men. They spread out, surrounding everyone. Securing a situation that's gotten out of control. Deputy Director Keller is under military protection pending investigation. He just bombed a federal facility, Marcus said. Killed a dozen people. And he's threatening to release anthrax. Allegations, Brixton said calmly, which will be thoroughly investigated. But right now, he's still a senior intelligence official with clearances above your pay grade. So you're going to lower your weapons and let us handle this. Cross's jaw tightened. You're protecting him. I'm following protocol. Protocol? Ava's voice shook with rage. He murdered my unit. He destroyed evidence. He tried to kill us. And you're calling it protocol? Brixton looked at her. I don't know who you are, but I know what you're claiming is serious, which is exactly why it needs to go through proper channels, not vigilante justice in an airport warehouse. Marcus stepped forward. General, listen to me. Keller's been working with outside elements. He's compromised. He's been feeding classified intel to... I've read the reports, Colonel. The allegations are being taken seriously. But until there's a formal indictment, Deputy Director Keller is afforded certain protections. That's how the system works. The system's broken, Marcus said quietly. Brixton's expression hardened. Maybe. But it's the system we've got. Now stand down. Keller was watching the exchange, that same dead smile on his face. He'd won. Even cornered, even exposed, the machine he'd built was protecting him. Cross lowered his weapon, slowly. His men followed suit. Brixton nodded to his team. They moved toward Keller. And that's when Ava saw it. The look in Keller's eyes, not relief, not satisfaction. Something else. He's going to do it, she said. He's going to press the button. Everyone turned to look at Keller. He was holding the dispersal device, thumb hovering over the trigger. You think I'm going to let you parade me in front of cameras? Keller said. Let them pick apart everything I did? Destroy my legacy? No. If I'm going down, I'm taking everyone with me. Brixton took a step forward. Raymond, don't be stupid. You press that button, you're killing everyone in this room, including yourself. I know. There's no coming back from that. I know, Keller said again. He looked at Ava. This is your fault, all of it. If you'd just stayed dead... But I didn't, Ava said. Her voice was steady now. I survived, and I'm still here, and you can kill me, but the truth's already out. Senator Vance has copies of everything. The media has the story. You can't erase it anymore. Keller's thumb twitched on the button, and Marcus moved, fast, faster than Ava thought possible. He closed the distance between them in 2 steps, grabbed Keller's wrist, twisted. The device went flying. Keller tried to fight back, but Marcus was trained for this. He took Keller to the ground, hard, pinned him. Cross's men rushed forward, secured Keller, retrieved the dispersal device, closed the anthrax container. Brixton stood there, stunned. His men didn't know what to do. The situation had shifted too fast. Cross picked up the device, examined it. It's armed. He really was going to do it. He looked at Brixton. Still think he deserves protection? Brixton's face was pale. He pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke quietly. When he hung up, he looked at Keller, still pinned to the ground. Raymond Keller, you're under military arrest. Charges pending investigation. Get him out of here. His men moved in, pulled Keller to his feet, cuffed him. Keller didn't resist, just stared at Ava as they led him away. This isn't over. Yes, Ava said quietly. It is. The aftermath took hours. FBI arrived, DOD investigators, hazmat teams to secure the anthrax. Brixton disappeared into phone calls and closed-door meetings. Cross coordinated with multiple agencies, making sure evidence was preserved, statements were recorded, protocols were followed. Ava and Marcus sat in a break room, drinking bad coffee, not saying much. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by exhaustion so complete Ava could barely keep her eyes open. Senator Vance appeared in the doorway. She looked as tired as they felt. You two all right? Define all right, Marcus said. Vance sat across from them. The Senate's opening a formal investigation. DOJ is getting involved. Keller's being held in military custody pending charges. And thanks to Major Kendrick's testimony, recorded before she died, we've got enough to build a case that'll put him away for life. She recorded testimony? Ava asked. Hours of it. Started talking the moment she was arrested. Gave us names, dates, operations, everything. Vance's expression was grim. She knew Keller would try to silence her, made sure there'd be a record even if she didn't survive. Ava closed her eyes. At least she did that. It's not enough, Marcus said. How many people did Keller kill? How many lives did he destroy? And now he gets a trial, gets due process, gets to tell his side. That's how justice works, Vance said. It's not perfect, but it's what we have. Marcus looked at her. Is it justice? Really? Vance didn't answer right away. Finally, she said, it's accountability, which is more than he had yesterday. Over the next 3 days, the story exploded. Media coverage was relentless. Keller's face on every screen, every headline, details emerging about the cover-up, the leaked intelligence, the deaths in Raqqa. Witnesses coming forward, colleagues distancing themselves, the defense establishment scrambling to control the damage. Ava watched it from a secure hotel room under protection until the investigation was complete. She saw herself on screen too, old photos, military records, reporters tracking down her history. They called her a hero, a whistleblower, a survivor. The words felt hollow. Marcus was in a room down the hall, giving depositions, being debriefed by multiple agencies. Briggs had been released after his statement was recorded. Cross was coordinating the ongoing investigation, making sure nothing got swept under the rug. On the 4th day, Hollis called. Ava stared at the phone for a long time before answering. Carter? It's Dr. Hollis. I know. I wanted to... He paused. I wanted to apologize for firing you, for not listening. I should have... It's fine. It's not fine. You saved lives that night, and I threw you out because I was more worried about policy than people. Ava was quiet. Then, why are you calling? Because I want to offer you your job back. Full reinstatement, with a formal apology on your record, and I'd like to discuss a supervisory position in trauma services. I don't want it. Hollis sounded surprised. You don't? No, I'm done with Redwood Bay. I'm done with hiding. I'm figuring out what comes next, but it's not going back to being someone nobody sees. I understand. Hollis cleared his throat. For what it's worth, I see you now. What you did took courage, real courage, and I'm sorry it took all of this for me to realize it. Yeah, me too. She hung up, stared at the phone, then she deleted his number. 2 weeks later, Keller's trial date was set. The charges were extensive: murder, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, attempted terrorism. Federal prosecutors had built a case they said was airtight. Defense attorneys were arguing everything from diminished capacity to national security privilege. Ava was subpoenaed to testify. So was Marcus. They'd have to relive Raqqa all over again, this time in front of cameras and lawyers and a jury. The night before testimony, Ava met Marcus at a diner near the courthouse. They sat in a booth in the back, picked at food neither of them wanted. "You ready for tomorrow?" Marcus asked. "No, me neither." They sat in silence for a while. Then Ava said, "What happens after? After the trial? After all of this is finally done?" Marcus shook his head. "I don't know. I thought getting here would feel different, like closure. But it doesn't. Because it's not over yet. Maybe it'll never be over. Maybe this is just something we carry now." Ava thought about that. About the weight she'd been carrying for 8 years. About how she'd tried to set it down by becoming someone else. "I don't want to carry it alone anymore." Marcus looked at her. "You won't have to." The next morning, they walked into the courthouse together. Press was everywhere. Cameras. Reporters shouting questions. Security pushing them back. Ava kept her head down, kept walking. Marcus beside her. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Keller sat at the defense table, flanked by lawyers, looking smaller somehow. Diminished. He glanced at Ava when she entered. No expression, just blank. Ava was called to testify first. She sat in the witness box, placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor asked her to describe the events in Raqqa. She did. Every detail, every moment. The words came easier than she expected, like they'd been waiting 8 years to be spoken. When she was done, the defense attorney stood. He was young, aggressive, the kind of lawyer who thought intimidation was the same as competence. "Ms. Finch, or should I say Ms. Carter, you've been living under a false identity for 8 years, correct?" "Yes." "And you never reported the events in Raqqa to proper authorities." "I was told the mission was classified, that I couldn't discuss it. But you discussed it now, conveniently, right when my client was up for a promotion." "I discussed it because he tried to kill me." The attorney's expression didn't change. "You claim Deputy Director Keller leaked intelligence that led to the deaths of your unit. But you have no direct evidence of this. No communications, no recordings, just your word. And Colonel Hale's word, and Major Kendrick's testimony. Major Kendrick is dead. Convenient for your narrative." Ava felt anger rising. "She's dead because your client killed her." "Objection," the attorney said. "Speculation." The judge sustained it. The attorney continued. "You've spent 8 years hiding, Ms. Finch, working under an assumed name, avoiding military and federal authorities. That's not the behavior of someone telling the truth. That's the behavior of someone running from consequences." "I was running from him," Ava pointed at Keller, "because I knew what he was capable of, and I was right." The attorney tried a few more angles, but nothing stuck. When he sat down, he looked frustrated. Marcus testified next. His account corroborated everything Ava had said, added details about the investigation he'd conducted, the evidence he'd compiled, the years he'd spent trying to bring Keller to justice. The defense attorney tried the same tactics, accused Marcus of fabricating evidence out of revenge, of conspiring with Ava to frame an innocent man. But Marcus was unshakable. Every question, he had an answer. Every accusation, he had documentation. By the end of the day, the prosecution felt confident. The defense looked worried. Keller sat at his table, staring at nothing. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Witness after witness, expert testimony, forensic analysis. The jury heard about Raqqa, about the cover-up, about the attacks on Marcus and Ava. They saw the anthrax container, the dispersal device. They watched footage of the detention facility explosion. And through it all, Keller said nothing. Didn't testify in his own defense. Just sat there, a ghost of the man who'd once controlled intelligence operations across multiple continents. On the final day, closing arguments were delivered. The prosecutor laid out the case. Meticulous. Damning. The defense attorney did his best to create reasonable doubt. Talked about the fog of war and the complexity of intelligence work, the sacrifices made in the name of national security. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they came back, the courtroom was silent. The foreman stood. Read the verdict. Guilty. On all counts. Keller's face didn't change. He just nodded slowly, like he'd expected this all along. Sentencing was scheduled for the following month. Legal experts predicted multiple life sentences. No possibility of parole. Ava watched as Keller was led out in cuffs. He looked at her one last time. She stared back, unflinching, and then he was gone. Outside the courthouse, press was waiting. Questions fired from every direction. Ava and Marcus pushed through without answering. Cross met them at a vehicle, got them clear. "It's done," Cross said. "Yeah," Marcus replied. But he didn't sound relieved, because they all knew it wasn't really done. The trial was over. Keller would spend the rest of his life in prison. But the damage he'd caused, the lives he'd destroyed, the trust he'd broken, that would take years to repair, if it ever could be. That night, Ava sat in her hotel room, staring at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed. A message from Senator Vance. DOD has cleared you. Full honorable discharge retroactive to 2017. All benefits restored. If you want to come back, there's a place for you. Ava stared at the message. Thought about going back. About being Lieutenant Finch again. About walking into a uniform and a life she'd left behind. She deleted the message. Another text came in. This one from Briggs. "Rex and I are headed back to base tomorrow. Wanted to say thanks again. For everything. You ever need anything, you call." Ava smiled, typed back. "Take care of that dog." A knock at the door. She opened it. Marcus stood there, hands in his pockets. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. "No? Want company?" She stepped aside. He came in. They sat on the couch, not talking, just existing in the same space. Finally, Marcus said, "What do we do now?" "I don't know. We can't go back to who we were." "No. But we can't keep living like this either." Ava thought about it. About Mara Finch, who died in Raqqa. About Ava Carter, who tried to disappear into a quiet life. About whoever she was now. "Maybe we don't go back," she said. "Maybe we go forward, find something new." "Like what?" "I don't know yet. But I'm tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of letting other people tell me who I'm supposed to be." Marcus nodded. "So what? We just start over?" Something like that. They sat in silence for a while longer. Then Marcus's phone rang. He looked at the screen, frowned, answered. "Hello?" His expression changed, darkened. He listened for a long time. Finally said, "When?" Listened more. "We'll be there?" He hung up. Looked at Ava. "What is it?" she asked. "That was Vance. Keller's attorney just filed an appeal, claims new evidence. Evidence that supposedly proves Keller was acting on orders from someone higher up." Ava felt cold. "What does that mean?" "It means Keller's not the top of the chain. It means someone above him authorized the Raqqa operation. Someone who's still out there, still protected." "Who?" Marcus shook his head. "They didn't say, but Vance wants us in Washington tomorrow. Said there's something we need to see." Ava stared at him. "This isn't over." "No," Marcus said quietly. "It's not." And somewhere in a maximum security facility, Raymond Keller sat in his cell, staring at the wall, and smiled for the first time since his arrest, because he'd just played his final card. The drive to Washington took 4 hours through rain that hammered the windshield like it had something to prove. Ava sat in the passenger seat, watching water blur the world outside, trying not to think about what waited at the end of the road. Marcus drove in silence, jaw tight, hands steady on the wheel. Neither of them had slept. Neither of them tried. Senator Vance had sent a car, but Marcus refused it. Too exposed, he said. Too easy to track. So they took back roads, switched vehicles twice, arrived at a private entrance to the Hart building just before dawn. Vance was waiting inside, flanked by 2 federal marshals and a woman Ava didn't recognize. Mid-40s, suit that cost more than Ava's car, expression that said she'd seen worse things than this and hadn't blinked. "This is Deputy Attorney General Sarah Caldwell," Vance said. "DOJ. She's leading the investigation into Keller's claims." Caldwell extended a hand. Ava shook it. The woman's grip was firm, assessing. "I've read your testimony," Caldwell said. Both of you. It's compelling. But we've got a problem. Let me guess, Marcus said. Keller's naming names. One name. Caldwell pulled out a folder, handed it to Marcus. Secretary of Defense William Trent. Keller's claiming Trent personally authorized the Raqqa operation, knew about the asset's information, ordered the leak to eliminate him before he could testify. Ava felt the floor tilt. The Secretary of Defense. Currently on a diplomatic mission in Brussels, but he's cutting it short, flying back tonight to address the allegations. Caldwell's expression was carved from stone. If Keller's telling the truth, this goes beyond one rogue official. This is a systemic failure at the highest levels of government. Marcus was flipping through the folder. Documents, communications, authorization codes. His face went pale. Some of this is real. These signatures, I've seen them before. Trent did authorize the mission, but that doesn't mean... It doesn't prove he ordered the leak, Vance finished, but it gives Keller's appeal credibility. And if we can't disprove it, the conviction gets overturned. Keller walks on a technicality, and Trent goes down instead. So we're trading one guilty man for another? Ava asked. We're trying to find the truth, Caldwell said, which is why you're here. Keller's attorney has requested a closed-door deposition. You two, Keller, and a federal mediator. No press, no public record. Just a conversation. Marcus looked at her like she'd suggested they walk into a minefield. You want us to sit across from the man who tried to kill us and have a conversation? I want you to hear what he has to say, because if he's lying, you'll know. And if he's not, Caldwell paused, then we've got a bigger problem than we thought. The deposition was scheduled for that afternoon in a secure facility beneath the courthouse. Ava spent the morning in a conference room, drinking coffee that tasted like battery acid, going over documents with Marcus and a legal team that talked in acronyms and legalese until her head hurt. Cross showed up around noon. He looked like he'd been up for days. You don't have to do this. Yes, we do, Ava said. Keller's playing games, trying to stay relevant, trying to negotiate. Then we call his bluff. Cross studied her. You're different. How? You're not running anymore. Ava thought about that. About the woman who'd walked into Redwood Bay Medical Center 3 months ago, invisible and trying to stay that way. About who she'd become since then. No, I'm not. At 2 p.m., they were escorted into a windowless room with a table, chairs, recording equipment. A federal mediator sat at one end, a judge, retired, brought in specifically for this. Keller was brought in last, cuffed, flanked by guards. He looked worse than he had at trial, thinner, grayer, like prison was eating him from the inside. He sat across from Ava and Marcus, met their eyes. No emotion, just calculation. The mediator spoke. This deposition is being recorded. Everything said here is under oath and can be used in subsequent legal proceedings. Mr. Keller, you've made serious allegations against Secretary Trent. You have the floor. Keller leaned back in his chair. Secretary Trent has been running black operations through DOD for 12 years. Operations Congress doesn't know about. Operations funded through ghost accounts and shell corporations. The Raqqa mission was one of them. That's a lie, Marcus said. Is it? Check the funding trail. Check who signed off on the operational budget. Check who had final authority over target selection. Keller's voice was calm. I was the executioner, but Trent pulled the trigger. Ava leaned forward. Why should we believe you? You've lied about everything else. Because I'm already going to prison for life. I've got nothing left to lose. But Trent does. He's got a career, a legacy, a future. And if I'm going down, I'm taking him with me. The mediator shuffled papers. Do you have evidence to support these claims? I have documentation, communications, meeting records, all of it classified, all of it buried in systems only a handful of people can access. Keller looked at Caldwell. You want the truth? Give me immunity. Let me walk, and I'll give you everything. The room went silent. Marcus stood up so fast his chair fell over. Absolutely not. Sit down, Colonel, the mediator said. He killed people. He tried to kill us. And now he wants immunity? Caldwell spoke up. Colonel Hale, this is a negotiation. We're exploring options. There are no options. He's guilty. He was convicted. This is just him trying to weasel out of consequences. Keller smiled. You think this is about me? I'm already dead. I'll die in prison whether it's now or in 20 years. But Trent, he's still out there, still making decisions, still running operations. And if you don't stop him, more people die. More units get burned. More soldiers get blamed for his mistakes. Ava stared at him, trying to see past the manipulation, trying to find the truth buried under layers of self-preservation. You're scared of him. Keller's smile faded. What? You're scared of Trent. That's what this is. You're not trying to bring him down out of some sense of justice. You're trying to drag him into the pit with you because you're terrified of what he'll do if you don't. Keller's jaw tightened. You don't know what you're talking about. Yes, I do. Because I know you. You're a survivor. You do whatever it takes to stay alive. And right now, the only way you survive prison is if Trent's locked up too. Because if he's free, he's a threat. He can reach you. He can silence you, just like he silenced everyone else. The room was still. Keller stared at Ava, and for the first time she saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. He's already tried, Keller said quietly. 3 times in the last 2 weeks. Inmates paid to start fights. Guards who conveniently looked the other way. I'm a dead man walking unless he goes down. Caldwell leaned forward. If that's true, why not tell us everything? Why demand immunity? Because I don't trust you. I don't trust anyone. The only leverage I've got is what I know, and I'm not giving it up for free. The deposition ended without resolution. Keller was taken back to his cell. Ava, Marcus, Caldwell, and Vance reconvened in a secure conference room. The legal team was already arguing. Some wanted to offer limited immunity, others wanted to call Keller's bluff and proceed without his testimony. Ava listened to them talk in circles for 20 minutes before she stood up. Stop. Everyone turned to look at her. This isn't about Keller. It's about Trent. So forget immunity. Forget negotiations. We go after Trent directly. We find the evidence Keller claims exists, and we do it without him. Caldwell frowned. That evidence is classified, buried in systems we can't access without a warrant, and we can't get a warrant without probable cause. And we don't have probable cause without Keller's testimony. Then we find another way. Marcus caught on. The task force. There were other survivors, other people who knew what was happening. We find them, get them to talk. Vance shook her head. Most of them are dead or disappeared. The ones left are too scared to come forward. Then we make them less scared, Ava said. We show them Keller's already in prison. We show them the system can work. We give them a reason to believe it's safe to speak up. Caldwell studied her. You think you can do that? I can try. Over the next week, Ava and Marcus tracked down every surviving member of the Syria task force. It wasn't easy. Some had changed names. Some had moved overseas. Some refused to answer calls or open doors. But Ava was relentless. She'd learned from 8 years of hiding. She knew how to find people who didn't want to be found. They found a medic in Oregon who'd served alongside Ava, a communications specialist in Montana who'd seen the orders come through, a logistics officer in Georgia who'd questioned the mission parameters and been reassigned for asking too many questions. One by one, they convinced them to testify. Not with promises of immunity or protection, but with something simpler. The truth. The chance to finally say what had happened without fear of reprisal. By the end of the week, they had 6 witnesses. Not enough to guarantee a conviction, but enough to build a case. Caldwell pulled strings, got warrants, accessed classified files, and what they found was damning. Trent's signature on authorization forms, his approval on funding requests, his direct communications with Keller about the Raqqa operation. Not enough to prove he ordered the leak, but enough to prove he knew about the mission's true purpose. Enough to prove he'd lied to Congress about it. Secretary Trent returned from Brussels to a media firestorm. He held a press conference, denied everything, called the allegations a politically motivated witch hunt. He was composed, confident, every inch the statesman. But Caldwell was building her case. Subpoenas went out, documents were unsealed, witnesses were called before a grand jury, and slowly, methodically, the walls closed in. 3 weeks after Keller's deposition, the grand jury returned an indictment. Secretary of Defense William Trent was charged with obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and abuse of authority. He resigned within hours. His attorney issued a statement claiming innocence and promising a vigorous defense. The trial was set for 6 months out. Ava watched the news coverage from a hotel room in Virginia, saw Trent's face on every screen, saw analysts debating his guilt, saw politicians scrambling to distance themselves, and she felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just exhaustion. Marcus knocked on her door that evening. "You okay?" "I don't know what I am." He came in, sat on the couch. "We got him, both of them. That's what we wanted." "Is it? Isn't it?" Ava sat beside him. "I thought it would feel different, like closure, like winning, but it just feels empty." Marcus nodded slowly. "Because it doesn't bring anyone back, doesn't undo what happened. We got justice, but justice doesn't heal wounds." They sat in silence. Then Ava asked, "What do we do now?" "I don't know. What do you want to do?" Ava thought about it, about the ER, about the patients she'd saved, about the moment she'd knelt beside a wounded dog and everything had changed. "I want to help people, real people, not bureaucrats or politicians or systems, just people who need help." "As a nurse?" "Maybe, or something else. I don't know yet." She looked at him. "What about you?" Marcus was quiet for a long time. "I spent 8 years trying to bring Keller down. Now that it's done, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with myself. The mission's over, but I'm still here. So find a new mission." "Like what?" "I don't know, but you're good at what you do. And there are people out there who need someone like you, someone who doesn't give up, someone who fights for the truth even when it's hard." Marcus smiled, just a little. "You sound like a recruiter." "Maybe I am." 2 months later, Ava was back at Redwood Bay. Not at the hospital. At a small clinic on the edge of town that served the homeless, the uninsured, the people who fell through every crack the system had. The pay was terrible. The hours were worse. But every patient who walked through the door looked her in the eye, knew her name, treated her like she mattered. She was stitching up a man who'd been in a fight when Briggs walked in, Rex beside him. The dog's tail wagged when he saw her. Briggs grinned. "Heard you were back in town." Ava tied off the suture, applied a bandage. "Heard you got promoted?" "Master Sergeant now, got assigned to a training unit, teaching new handlers how to work with K9S. He gestured to Rex. "He's officially retired, living the good life." "He earned it." Briggs watched her work. "This is good. What you're doing here. It matters." "Yeah, it does." He lingered for a moment, then handed her a card. "If you ever want to do something bigger, trauma training for first responders, disaster response, that kind of thing, call me. We could use someone with your skill set." Ava took the card. "I'll think about it." After he left, she looked at the card, thought about what bigger might mean, about how far she'd come from the woman who'd tried to disappear into a quiet life, about the possibilities still waiting. Marcus called that evening. "Trent's trial starts next week. Vance wants us there." "I know." "You going?" "Yeah, you?" "Yeah." They were both there when the trial began, sat in the gallery, watched as prosecutors laid out their case. Trent's defense was aggressive, but the evidence was overwhelming. Testimony from the task force survivors, documents with his signature, communications that proved he knew exactly what was happening. On the 8th day, the defense rested. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty. On 3 counts. Trent's face went blank. His attorney immediately filed an appeal, but everyone knew it was over. He'd be sentenced to 15 years minimum. His career was destroyed, his legacy tainted. Everything he'd built was gone. Outside the courthouse, press swarmed. This time, Ava and Marcus didn't run. They stood on the steps and answered questions, not all of them, but enough. "How does it feel to see justice served?" a reporter asked. Ava thought about it. "It feels necessary. But it doesn't fix what was broken. It doesn't bring anyone back. It just means the people responsible are being held accountable, and that's a start. What's next for you?" "I'm going back to work, helping people who need it, living my life." "And your real name? Are you Mara Finch or Ava Carter?" Ava smiled. "I'm both. I'm whoever I need to be to get through the day. And that's enough." A few weeks later, Hollis called again. Ava almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Carter, it's Hollis." "I know." I saw the news about the trial, about everything, and He paused. I wanted you to know that the hospital board has issued a formal apology for your termination, for how you were treated. And we've implemented new policies about patient care, about listening to staff, about not putting procedure over people. Ava was quiet. Then, good. I know it doesn't change what happened, but I wanted you to know we're trying to do better. That's all anyone can do. After she hung up, she realized she didn't feel angry anymore, didn't feel vindicated, just tired. And maybe that was okay. Maybe that was what healing looked like. 6 months after Trent's conviction, Ava received a letter. No return address. Postmarked from a federal prison in Colorado. She almost threw it away. But curiosity won. Inside was a single page, handwritten, Keller's handwriting. Lieutenant Finch, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that everything I told you about Trent was true. He was the architect. I was just the tool. That doesn't absolve me. I know what I did. I know what I am. But for what it's worth, I'm glad you survived. Not because it helped bring us down, but because you deserved to. You were a good soldier. You are a good person. And the world needs more of those. I'll die in here. I've accepted that. But knowing you're out there, still fighting, still helping people, it makes the weight a little lighter. RK. Ava read it twice. Then she burned it, watched the paper curl and blacken and disappear. And she felt the last piece of Raqqa finally let go. A year later, Ava stood in front of a classroom full of paramedics and first responders. She was teaching trauma care, field medicine, the kind of skills that saved lives when there was no backup, no equipment, just your hands and your training. Marcus stood at the back of the room, watching. He'd started a consulting firm, helping organizations improve their crisis response protocols, training security teams, advising on operations. It kept him busy, kept him focused, gave him purpose. After the class, they grabbed coffee, sat outside in the sun. You're good at this, Marcus said. Teaching. It feels right. Passing on what I know. Making sure people are prepared. Think you'll ever go back to the military? Ava shook her head. That part of my life is over. I'm not Mara Finch anymore, and I'm okay with that. Who are you then? She thought about it. About the journey from a woman trying to disappear to someone willing to stand up and be seen. About the scars she carried and the strength she'd found. I'm someone who survived. Someone who fought back. Someone who refused to stay invisible. Marcus raised his coffee cup. I'll drink to that. They sat in comfortable silence. Two people who'd been through hell and come out the other side. Not unscathed, not unchanged, but still standing. That evening, Ava drove back to her apartment, small, modest, but it was hers. She didn't jump at shadows anymore, didn't check locks 3 times, didn't lie awake planning escape routes. She was finally, truly home. Her phone buzzed, a text from Vance. Congressional hearing next month. They want to hear recommendations for preventing another Raqqa. Interested in testifying? Ava stared at the message. That he thought about standing in front of Congress, about telling them how to fix a broken system, about using her voice to make sure no one else had to go through what she did. She typed back, yes, because she'd spent 8 years hiding, 8 years running, 8 years letting other people write her story. Not anymore. 3 months later, Ava Carter sat before the Senate Armed Services Committee. Cameras rolling, media watching. The whole world tuned in. She told them about Raqqa, about the failures, about the cover-ups, about the cost of prioritizing politics over people. And she gave them recommendations, concrete, actionable, ways to protect soldiers, ways to ensure accountability, ways to make sure the truth couldn't be buried. When she was done, the committee chair thanked her, said her testimony would shape policy for years to come, said her courage was an example to everyone. Ava just nodded, because she hadn't done it for praise, hadn't done it for recognition. She'd done it because someone needed to, because the 12 people who died in Raqqa deserved a voice, and if she could be that voice, she would. Afterward, standing on the Capitol steps, a young woman approached her, early 20s, nervous. She wore an army uniform, second lieutenant, fresh out of training. Ma'am, I wanted to thank you for what you said in there, for standing up. I'm about to deploy, and I was scared. But hearing you talk about surviving, about fighting back, about not letting them silence you, it helped. So thank you." Ava looked at this young soldier, saw herself 8 years ago, full of hope and fear and determination. "What's your name?" "Lieutenant Sarah Morgan." "Listen to me, Sarah. Whatever happens out there, you hold on to who you are. You don't let anyone take that from you. And if something goes wrong, if you see something that doesn't sit right, you speak up. You don't bury it. You don't run from it. You face it, even if it's hard, even if it costs you, because your voice matters, your truth matters, and nobody gets to take that away from you." The young lieutenant's eyes were bright. She saluted. Ava returned it, and then the lieutenant walked away, shoulders back, head high. Marcus appeared beside Ava, making a difference. Trying to. "You are. You really are." They walked together down the steps, past reporters, past cameras, past all the noise and chaos of a system that was still broken, but maybe, just maybe, starting to heal. At the bottom of the steps, Cross was waiting. He smiled when he saw them. "You two did good." "We all did," Ava said. "So what now?" Ava looked at Marcus, at Cross, at the city spread out before them, at the possibilities still waiting. "Now we keep going. We keep fighting. We keep making sure this never happens again." Simple as that? Simple as that. And as they walked away from the Capitol, away from the cameras and the press and the weight of everything that had happened, Ava felt something she hadn't felt in 8 years. Freedom. Not because her enemies were defeated, not because justice had been served, but because she'd finally stopped running. She'd faced her past, spoke her truth, and refused to be invisible anymore. She was Mara Finch. She was Ava Carter. She was a soldier, a nurse, a survivor, a fighter. She was all of it, and she was done apologizing for any of it. Years later, when people asked her about Raqqa, about the trials, about everything that had happened, she always gave the same answer. "I was someone who got knocked down, who lost everything, who was blamed for things I didn't do. But I got back up. I fought back. And I won. Not because I was stronger or braver or better than anyone else, but because I refused to stay down. I refused to let them win. And if you take nothing else from my story, take that. You have power. You have a voice. And nobody gets to take that away from you unless you let them. So don't let them. Stand up. Speak out. Fight back. Because you're worth it. And your truth matters." And somewhere in a clinic on the edge of town, in classrooms full of future medics, in the halls of Congress where policy was being rewritten, in the lives of soldiers who learned to speak up, and systems that learned to listen, Ava Carter's voice kept echoing, louder than any explosion, stronger than any cover-up, impossible to silence.